like to call to order the Dover-Sherborn and Dover-Sherborn Regional School Committee meeting, otherwise known as the Joint School Committee meeting.
I'm sorry. Angie, you have to start it because we haven't reorged.
Well, you're going to reorg Union 50,
Right.
but not the joint school committee. The joint school committees are different than Union 50.
True, but we still have to, okay, so it's fine then.
So I think traditionally, incorrectly, we've been voting on the chair of the joint school committee, but if you ask Don, for example, the joint school committee chairmanship has been actually shared, and sometimes it was actually shared by 3 people in one meeting.
That's true.
It's the
Okay.
Union 50 that has to be, which is dealing with superintendent hiring and contracts. So you do have to reorg the Union 50, but right now, we're just reopening the joint school committee.
Okay.
And it's Nancy's turn, essentially, because you've been rotating.
Yeah, sorry, I was just trying to
Yep.
make sure that's.
Okay. Okay, June 16th at 6:33. I'd like to start out by asking Andrew to discuss why we are here in person today.
Yes, okay, so I know a lot of folks are wondering the same thing that we have been wondering for the past 72 hours. You know, what's happening? Are we going to be in person? Are we going to be remote? Governor Baker has wanted to extend the opportunity to hold public meetings remotely, but he needs legislative approval. He had Senate approval earlier this week. It got held up in the House, and we kept on wondering, are we going to find out whether or not this is approved or not? Eventually, the House today approved his extending some of these privileges, including allowing us to have remote meetings. However, that information came to us way too late. We had this information out to people that we were going to be in person, so we opted, it was less than 24 hours when we finally knew officially, so we opted to stay with the in-person model. So that's where we are. In terms of your decision down the road, now you can go until, does anybody remember the date?
April 2022.
April 2022, you can still operate as you have been remotely via Zoom. Obviously, there were some benefits to that, right? We had some participation hitting 500 at one point over the course of the year. So there's some benefits to that. As the 3 committees will have to make that determination and obviously work that out with Ms. Smith when that time comes. But I would figure that would probably be for your fall meetings. So you'll have to make that decision. But that's why we're here today. So.
Okay, great. Thanks, Andrew. Going to the second item on the agenda, Union 50 reorganization. Is there a nomination?
I nominate Nancy Cordell for Union 50 Sherborn School Committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Should probably go committee by committee.
Yeah, so
Okay.
we'll
Okay. Sherborn,
poll our Sherborn members
Yes.
first. Yeah. So Colleen,
okay. Dennis?
Dennis, yes.
Angie Johnson, yes.
Amanda Brown, yes.
Nancy Cordell, yes.
And David is absent.
And David is absent, yes.
And we should welcome David, although he's
Yeah,
absent.
yeah.
The new member of the Sherborn School Committee, David,
Yes.
do you know how to pronounce his name by any chance?
Cases.
Cases, yes.
Could I have Dover School Committee? Oh, sorry, Sarah? Oh,
You can
we'll take-
pull your
yeah.
committee.
Hold on,
Yeah.
Leslie Young? Leslie Young, yes. Mark Healy?
Mark Healy, yes.
Liz Grossman?
Liz Grossman, yes.
Colleen Burt? Colleen Burt, yes. And Sarah Gutierrez, Dunn, yes.
Okay, great, thank you. And the Regional Committee? Aggie?
Do we participate? Because we're not Union 50.
Right,
Okay.
that's correct.
Okay.
It's just a you guys.
All right.
Yeah.
as it
Thank
was.
you. No, although we love you.
Yeah.
Okay, and so now we need to do it for Dover.
You did
We
it
did
for
do it for
Dover.
Dover.
Okay,
Yeah.
no, I meant for that, don't they, you all have all your Union 50, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so we're done. All right,
Okay,
that's it.
great, all right. I'd like to ask Andrew to introduce our new interim superintendent.
Yes, I actually had a few words, if that's okay. I'm sorry, my phone faded away on me. Yes, it's a pleasure, actually, to introduce Kathleen Smith, our new interim superintendent for the 2021-22 school year. Ms. Smith comes to us with a wealth of experience, having spent over 40 years in the Brockton Public Schools as an elementary and secondary educator, a school adjustment counselor, director of community schools, and ultimately as superintendent. Most recently, and during the course of the pandemic, Ms. Smith has also served as an interim superintendent for the Weymouth Public Schools and the Salem Public Schools. Ms. Smith brings with her a deep passion for education and for reaching every child, experience in successful budgeting and negotiation, a background in diversity and equity, and an ability to establish quick rapport and hit the ground running to support the work and progress of the district. She received the unanimous support of all 3 school committees at our May 10th meeting to select the interim superintendent. She will join DS on July 1st officially, and we look forward to welcoming her to our community. So welcome, Kathy. I can tell you guys happily that we had a wonderful meeting yesterday to discuss the transition. I am as excited as you are. I think she's going to do a great job, and we think a lot alike. So welcome aboard.
Thank you, Superintendent. I'm very pleased to be here. As Dr. Keough has told you, we spent quite a few hours yesterday. I felt right at home. I'm so pleased to be able to carry on the work that has been going on for a number of years here. I know that Dr. Keough is from the Dover-Sherborn area. I believe attended the schools here, and I connected right away to that passion, the passion for wanting to make sure that every child has the opportunities that you so expertly provide for your students in Dover-Sherborn. So as he said, starting July 1st, school committee, I know it's vacation time. I'm looking forward to meeting with you individually. It's a little daunting when I think of 16 members, but hopefully we'll be able to connect, and I'm looking at the community, and I'm looking forward for opportunities as things open up to be able to meet with parents, and most importantly, I was just really excited to come on board and see your children out in the fields doing the things that we know they need to be doing. So again, July 1st is quickly approaching. We have a lot of work to do, but I am very optimistic. And I'm so pleased that you selected me. I will work very hard for your community. And the end result, I'm hoping, will be a superintendent search to bring a permanent superintendent on board to Dover-Sherborn. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, next order of business is a public comment. And I'm going to read something about public comment right now. Community comments are an opportunity for members of the community to be heard. We respectfully request that you make your comments brief, about 2 to 3 minutes, and then you move the discussion forward by adding new information. This is not a forum for answering questions or engaging in debate. Once the public comment section of the meeting has been concluded, we will move on to other business, and unsolicited comments from the community will no longer be permitted. This is standard operating procedure in school committee meetings across our 3 school districts, and actually best practices across school districts across Massachusetts. We invite everyone to stay and listen to the rest of the meeting, but understand that many of you are unable to, but we also understand if many of you aren't able to do so and have to leave. We appreciate that you've taken the time to participate in this most important process, and we encourage you to reach out to your school committee reps at any time. And when you stand, if you could state your name and where you live. Do we have any comments?
Hi, my name is Whitney Johnson, and I'm a Dover resident and mom of 2 young girls. The other one's down here. Thank you all for your dedication to our schools. I'm sure it's a great sacrifice of your time, and we all want what we think is best for our children and the children of our town. I'm going to comment on 2 extremely intertwined issues, DS aid and the equity audit. Both need to be paused immediately so that we can come to a more transparent understanding about their relationship to and influence over our school district. I've read through the DSA website and the equity audit statement proposal. To say I'm concerned with both is an understatement. I read DSA's FAQs stating that DSA doesn't change curriculum is cunning in its misdirection. Let me explain how. Think of it this way. The Mass Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is the architect and gives the blueprints to build the house. What does the house have to have structurally? And DSA is the decorator. They're filling the house with all the stuff, the furniture, the knickknacks, etc. So yes, the decorator can't change the blueprints and the structure, but they sure as heck can make a huge impact on the final product. DSA is unquestionably influencing and directing the curriculum of our schools. Why is this group controlling our schools? And if you don't see that it is, you're not paying attention. This group is controlling our schools via no official channel other than its own declaration to do so, by being led by school administrators and school committee members, which can only be described as the most obvious conflict of interest. DSA was formed. DSA has some undefined, unknown, unsubstantiated perception of massive inequities in our schools, so DSA wants an equity audit. The school committee, with members sitting on the board of DSA, approved such an audit. The audit statement proposal clearly states that recommendations from the audit will be included, unchecked, no questions asked, into our district strategic plan. This audit is being given overreaching and unchecked power, and it's being driven by DSA. I have no idea where DSA gets the authority to drive the bus on any of this. The fact that the money to fund the audit comes from private grant money is even more concerning than coming from taxpayer money, because that means an outside group is looking to affect our school district. And that is something the whole town should not only be aware of, but have a say in. If, for example, a religious group was looking to do an audit on socialistic tendencies in our schools, and give us a grant to conduct it and then make changes in our school's district, I can guarantee the people on this committee would have a problem with that. The equity audit statement is, quite frankly, almost condescending in how vague it is, and its lack of concrete information. What does equitable outcome for all mean? That is the stated goal. I'm not asking that facetiously. I have no idea what that could possibly mean. Do you mean everyone goes to the same college? Not possible. Do you mean everyone sorry, holding a baby. Do you mean everyone has the same opportunities outside of school? Not possible. Do you mean everyone gets the same grades? Not possible. Do you mean everyone makes the sports team? Not possible. Do you mean everyone gets the same paying job? Not possible. What on earth does equitable outcome for all mean? It's actually dangerous to teach and propose to our children that this is even possible. You are programming our children to be angry, envious, bitter, and confused when things aren't always equitable. We need to teach our children to engage in thoughtful, respectful, intelligent, and informed debate. Our schools should prioritize thinking critically about issues, not being indoctrinated to be little activists at the whim of school administrators and their personal agendas. We need to teach our children to be resilient. We need them to be able to think about topics and problems from a variety of angles and engage in healthy debate. This is how we truly prepare our children for the real world. People can disagree and still be friends. People can hold opposing views and still be kind and cordial. From where I stand, it certainly seems like our children are being taught that there is one point of view and one way to think. And if you don't think that way or agree, you are called, insert whatever slanderous buzzword people think qualifies as an intelligent response these days. You know what else is important aside from being able to engage in healthy, civil, informed, and intelligent debate? Science, math, language, art.
Excuse me.
I'm almost
It's-
finished.
Excuse me?
I'm almost finished.
Oh, okay, it's been 5
Yeah,
minutes.
I'm almost finished. Our school is clearly on a downward trajectory. Where is the focus on academic achievement and advancement? Simply put, you are wasting our children's potential by indulging in the self-righteous indignation of a select group of people. What is happening here is a massive overcorrection. I implore you to take a step back and really think about what is reasonable here. There is compromise and cooperation to be had. That is the right thing to do. Let's do right by our children and our community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So that was over 5 minutes, so I just appreciate if the next person that wants to speak, if they try to keep within the 2 to 3 minute mark and not repeat some of the same points.
Bradley Pastor, Conrad Lane in Dover. So page 6 of section K of the policy manual, the DS School Committee states, the school committee endorses the concept that community participation in the affairs of the school is essential to schools and community to maintain mutual confidence and respect to work together to improve the quality of education for students. It therefore intends to exert every effort to identify the desires of the community and be responsive to its action to those desires. All citizens will be encouraged to express ideas or concerns about the schools to the school administrators, to any appointed advisory bodies, and to the committee. I want to raise several issues that are inconsistent with the school committee's own policies and in fact erode the trust and respect that is key to having best-in-class education. The fact is that Judy Miller and Lynn Collins abused their positions on the RC to slander a member of the Dover community for political reasons in support of Maggie Sharon. There are two problems with these actions. First, the use of an email sent by a Dover resident, Ms. Malloy, to the RC outside of a public records request is inappropriate. As far as I know, no public records request has been made. To use the email to campaign against Ms. Malloy breaches any semblance of professionalism, trust, and respect for the community of which the RC serves. Second, Ms. Miller, Ms. Collins, and by extension, Ms. Sharon, added their own points of view and slandered a member of the Dover community in reference to the inappropriate use of the email. I go back to page 6, section K, which encourages all citizens to express ideas. Any resident of Dover-Sherborn should be able to express their point of view without fear of recrimination. Ms. Malloy's email and concerns were sent to the school about access to pornography in our schools. The email that was sent by Ms. Collins and Ms. Miller in support of Ms. Sharon jumped to the conclusions that Ms. Malloy is anti-LGBTQ, racist, and the amorphous alt-right, whatever that is. I don't even know what that is. The email was sent by Ms. Collins and Ms. Miller had the sole purpose to muddy the waters, slander a member of the community who had the audacity to run for school committee against their friend. The actions by Ms. Miller and Ms. Collins and the silence of the RSC have caused what should be a safe space for conversation about our schools and turned into a political fiefdom, where only alignment with Ms. Miller, Ms. Collins, and Ms. Sharon are the approved topics. Their silence on this matter is deafening. It's unfortunate that there have been no public response from anyone in the RSC regarding the inappropriate behavior. Many citizens are concerned that we apparently have a group of personal friends making school committee decisions in private in repeat violation of the open meeting law. There's very little public deliberation on almost every meaningful decision, and every vote seems to be 5-0. In the past few years, I'm not aware of a single issue where the chair or vice chair have been on the losing side of any vote. It strains credibility to believe that the committee is complying with the open meeting law. Abusive emails to the RSC, amongst other inappropriate behavior, should not go unchecked. The behavior was also raised in recent emails by former RSC member Michael Jaffe and resident Grant Stephen. Mr. Jaffe and Mr. Stephen raised legitimate concerns about email abuse and is referenced above the continued non-compliance to the open meeting law. These raised issues should not go unchecked. The silence by the RSC demonstrates a total disregard for not only your own policies, but respect for the community you all serve. Recent members of the Boston School Committee resigned after making disparaging comments about members of the community. Those members that resigned understood that the good of the community was better served by their departure. I am asking for the immediate resignation of these individuals and that the RSC open conversations about how this gross breach of policy and trust was allowed. In closing, I understand that by raising these concerns, I expose myself, my family, my children to similar slanderous comments. But these issues are too grave to remain silent. It is my hope that the rule of law, ethics, and personal accountability still holds true. I know it does for myself, and I hope it does for the members of our school committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have another public comment? Yes, sir. No, you need to do it with the baby in your arms. She's in.
I apologize. Hello, my name is J.R. Johnson. I'm a Dover resident with 2 young daughters. In order to treat people equitably, you sometimes need to treat them unequally. You'd be hard-pressed to find someone who rejects the idea of equity when you drill down into specific examples. For instance, it wouldn't be fair to give a 16-year-old kid who gets arrested for drunk driving for the first time punishment equal to that of a 50-year-old repeat offender. Sometimes history has demonstrated it to be prudent even to discriminate against people for certain immutable characteristics. For example, males have innate physical advantages over females, which is why we discriminate against males from participating in female sports. This practice of discrimination in sports has shown itself not to promote tribalism and divisiveness. Like any good concept, however, equity can be distorted and abused, and I believe the equity audit and anti-racist agenda is one of these instances where a good thing is being used to perpetuate harmful ideologies currently fashionable in the eyes of many of the individuals who currently happen to be in power. The equity audit studies people according to their race, nationality, and gender, and will create focus groups of teachers and administrators to understand their, quote, roles as culturally responsive anti-racist educators, unquote. It promises to, quote, make recommendations for how the Dover-Sherborn public schools can foster an anti-racist, culturally responsive school district, end quote. According to DSA, these recommendations will, quote, will be incorporated into the district's next strategic plan, end quote. While the monetary cost of this audit has been covered by some wealthy private donors that seek to influence our strategic plan, the valuable time of our children and teachers will be taken up in climate surveys and focus groups where they will be asked to think of their identities and the identities of others in terms of what groups they belong to. I believe it is harmful to become preoccupied with these group identities. People are naturally tribal and contentious. Have you seen social media lately? People are infinitely creative in finding ways to distinguish themselves from others. This doesn't need to be taught. Have you ever watched young kids or looked inside yourself? It's extremely toxic to stoke kids' inborn clannish tendencies and doing so will do the opposite of promoting unity and inclusion. Teaching kids to treat each other as they wish to be treated is simple. It doesn't require elaborate surveys and focus groups, or hiring gurus whose livelihoods depend on finding and deciphering hidden microaggressions and biases under every rock, or the promotion of controversial theories like anti-racism. Anti-racism is a vague and divisive system obsessed with race that requires trained prophets to interpret an ever-changing and intricate web of systemic power and race. The prescription of these anti-racist prophets is a complicated system of prejudging people and treating people categorically better or worse based on their race. Anti-racism's prescriptions are, in fact, the classical definition of racism, which history has shown to be a harmful genie whenever it is summoned. It's a hypocritical movement, much like the anti-fascist movement, which claims to be against fascism, but uses fascist techniques to pursue its agenda. I believe a big step to teaching our kids to treat each other as they want to be treated involves teaching them against all the waves of the current culture to see each other as fellow members of one human race.
Excuse me, is this almost?
I'm almost done.
Because we're at.
Yeah, I'll be
Okay.
quick, and I'll be out of everyone's hair. The slavery and Jim Crow laws that existed in our country were wrong, not because they led to unequal materialistic outcomes between people of different skin pigmentations, but because humans should treat each other like other humans, like they want to be treated, like fellow members of the human race. The golden rule isn't trendy, it won't sell any new books or fund elaborate racialist studies from elite universities and interest groups, but it isn't a false dichotomy to say that focusing on the human condition and on our commonalities is an opposite and incompatible approach from the self-segregating path we are on, which dwells on our differences and teaches our kids to see each other in terms of group identities. Please end the audit and end the dark and divisive path of anti-racism that we are on.
Okay.
I'm done.
Okay, thank you. So what I'll do moving forward, I will give everyone a 2-minute warning, and then, after 60 more seconds, we have to cut it, because if everyone is going to speak, so all right, so thank you. Yes?
Hi, if you just raise your hand, because I don't have prepared statement. My
That's
name
okay.
is Janie Whalen, and my family and I moved here from Lexington, Kentucky about 3 years ago. I can tell you that our first experience in the community was meeting people, administrators and students at the school, through a welcome, and sorry, I'm losing my voice, through a welcome orientation. During that orientation, we met some fantastic kids, including an individual who was moving here, who had decided, a young adult who had decided to change their pronoun. I thought I had finally come back to the Northeast after living in the South for 12 years. You have it great here. That's my first statement. And I really appreciate everything that the school district does. My daughter graduated last year. She's in NYU. My son is in high school. As far as some of the, my background in education is I was an assistant professor at the University of Pittsburgh, not high school, not middle school, college. So I have a little bit of an inkling, but, nothing like what you folks are doing. I can say that now, after being a professor, I'm a grant writer. So I've touched a little bit in this grant writing, and people here have used a lot of persuasive language. That's what grant writers do. And the motivation, it just seems that you guys are making a lot of hypothetical statements that that this was why they did it, and you can't do that, at least not in scientific grant writing, and I caution you not to do it here. And my last little bit of my own 2 cents is that I'm just so thrilled to get to know people who are passionate about how their children, how their school, is educating them. As far as the email sent from Ms. Collins and some, I don't know the other individuals, I have met Ms. Collins. I read that email very carefully, I just reread it. Ms. Collins referred to an email that had been sent that referred to a video, and the group that produced the video appears to be an anti-LGBTQ organization, not the person who originally brought that video forward. So I don't like that Ms. Collins thought that the person who brought attention to the video was saying that Ms. Collins thought that person was anti-LGBTQ. I read the email. I don't know what Ms. Collins' personal view is. I've never asked her. I don't know what the person, Ms. Lilley, I think that's the name. I don't know what that person's viewpoint is. I've never spoken to them. But you must be careful in rhetoric. Again, this is coming from a grant writer, a professional grant writer. So just turn down is all I have to say. And do be appreciative. Like I said, I've lived in communities that were extremely strident, disrespectful, care just as much probably as we all do. But I think it's just terrific here. And I'm really proud that we moved here, and I'm proud that we're a part of the community. So good luck.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. We have another.
Hi, yeah. So I'm Sam Gray. I'm a Dover resident and a graduate from the school district. I went here K through 12. And I'd like to speak in favor of the equity audit. Now, I could tell you that basically every black friend I had in the school district winces when they talk about their experience here. And I do not mean that as an understatement at all. I could tell you that boys in this school district start using the N-word pretty frequently around 7th grade. But at the risk of being inflammatory, I'm gonna say that the main reason that this is absolutely necessary is that if, frankly, half of what the boys in this district say in the locker room became public, they would not get hired anywhere. I'm really not trying to be flip here, but I think it's a little grotesque to ascribe all these nefarious motives to a bunch of well-meaning kids who really just care about their peers, want their peers to have the best educational experience possible. And I mean, I know that people are skeptical of the motivations behind the equity audit, but I can tell you that every person I know involved with DSAID and every person that I know involved with it means well. They're not out to get you. They're not out to get your kids. And I would really like to emphasize that acknowledging racism and talking about racism in schools is, first of all, something that teachers at this school district already do. So that's not something that the equity audit is going to change. And it's also something that I think the equity audit, if anything, is going to reinforce in a more meaningful way. Now, of course, I'm not going to sit here and believe that an equity audit will fix everything, but it's long overdue. And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Great, thank you.
Hi, my name is Praisha Ash. I am a Sherborn resident. I recently moved back from doing my undergrad in Canada, but I did graduate from Dover-Sherborn High School. It's unfortunate that the two young people that spoke earlier are gone because a lot of what I have to say is in response to them, and I would hope would prompt some thought and reconsideration. I am speaking in favor, that's the word, of the equity audit, and I think that this comes down to two fundamental problems. The first fundamental issue here is if we're discussing if the problem of racism exists within Dover-Sherborn schools or not. Clearly, I'm not white. Like, it's really obvious to everybody here that I'm not white. And I'm not somebody who's gonna speak delicately or kindly about things, because that's just not who I am. That's not how my mother raised me. I'm not white. I've dealt with racism at the school, and as somebody who moved here from Natick in 7th grade, I can tell you that it is worse here than it was at other schools. So to question the fact that racism exists is a moot point, because frankly, I'm sitting right here and I'm talking about it, and I am who I am because of the things that I've dealt with at this school. And this is not to say that I haven't experienced positives here, because I have. You know, I went on to go to a great school. My degree was influenced by a lot of the things that I experienced here. I mean, I can say with, you know, some surety that I am proud to be from here. However, I'm not proud of the experiences that I've gone through, and I'm not proud to say that some of the people I went to school with are people that I went to school with. Because the experiences that I and every single other student of color went through, at least in my year, if not other years, has been abhorrent. I mean, I've been called racial slurs. I've been threatened with physical abuse. I've been called words that I don't want to repeat, because it makes me feel sick to my stomach. So the fact that we're questioning whether racism exists in Dover-Sherborn is ridiculous to me, because I'm living proof that it does. I am living proof that it does, and I'm living proof that it happens and affects people. Another point of living proof is that I'm shaking while speaking about this, because it's hard. You know, a group of alumni and I have been speaking about, you know, what's been going on, and everyone says, Praisha, we wish we'd said something, because we all saw it happening. You know, everybody saw it happening. The fact that racism exists here is not a point of question. Now, the other fundamental point here is about the golden rule. The golden rule states, you know, treat others the way that you want to be treated. And something that the young man who was saying here said, you know, is that it's not about something along the lines of, it's not about anti-racism, it's about treating other people how you want to be treated. It really is more simple than that. And he has a problem with an equity audit that's being proposed by experts in this field who are NYU educated, people who are privately funding this, people who I'm sure you guys all know, you know, personally, and who know what they're doing with their money, let me make that very clear, are funding this because they believe this is the right way to go about. They're speaking to experts who have been vetted by the administration. You're not getting an audit from just anybody. I'm not doing the audit because I'm not an expert. The people who are doing the audit are people who know what they're doing, and you know, let's get back to the golden rule. It's about treating people how you want to be treated. I don't think the people who are racist towards me would like to be treated that way. So what is that if not anti-racism? That's all I had to say.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Kyrin Pucci. I also went to Dover-Sherborn K through 12. I'm from Sherborn. And honestly, it's kind of hard even to start talking because there are so many directions I could go with this. Honestly, the second that litany of pretty aggressive speech started, my whole body started shaking because I really fundamentally disagree with a lot of what some people are saying tonight. And I also think that it's kind of irrelevant whether I disagree with what they said or whether they disagree with an audit. I personally am very in favor of the audit. I'm in favor of it because I have direct lived experience going to the school. I don't actually, though, have direct lived experience of extremely discriminatory and hateful incidents. However, I've heard directly from so many of my friends, one thing after the next, and it's not really my place to share their personal traumatic incidents, but I just think when you're allocating a very large amount of money, you're affecting a lot of students' education. I think the most rudimentary thing to consider is the person making, or the people making that decision on where that money is going. Are they qualified to make that decision? What is their personal experience on the subject? How is that going to inform their opinion? And when I hear some very concerned parents talking about a few things which I listed, some direct quotes. We have, why is this group controlling our schools via no official channel other than its own self-direction to do so? Why does this group have influence over our school district? I have no idea where they get the authority to drive this. I couldn't help but be a little shocked because I think that applies directly to the person who was speaking. I'm a little confused as to why we all had to sit here and listen to that when I think the only people we need to be listening to about racism or discrimination in our schools are the students who have experienced that. We have one right here. We have so many students who aren't here. They can't be here. It's in person. They're at school. And also, they probably don't want to, because that's a lot of energy to have to go up and explain all your trauma from high school that a bunch of parents, uninformed, ignorant, are going to gaslight you and make you feel horrible. So I understand why there are only 3 students here. And I think, although we're a small minority, I think we have the most direct experience. We're definitely the most informed stakeholders to this whole issue. I think there are so many stakeholders here. There are the teachers, there are the students, there are the parents of the students. And maybe this time the stakeholders who are heard shouldn't be these ones who disagree with this audit, because maybe there are other people who are more qualified and they are clearly in favor. So that is what I have to share on this subject. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, you, sir, in the back.
Hi, I'm Chris Martin. I don't have any kids in the school system. Had son and daughter go through the Pine Hill and middle school and high school, so I'm an empty nester at the moment. Some of you might know I ran a sign write-in campaign for this committee, and we only started 6 or 7 days before the actual poll, so we got a couple hundred votes, actually 241 votes, but it wasn't enough to get the position. The foundation of my campaign, and in an effort to move the conversation forward, it seems to have a lot of stuff on both sides. The foundation of my campaign was the voice of the customer, which is the student. And so I endeavored on my own to go and interview. I'm now up to 28 students. They're not students, actually, they're graduates, anywhere from 1 to 8 years out of the high school. And my goal is to get to 100 and to publish the results. And my hope is that these results will help galvanize the community into what should be added, or what should be taken away, or what should be changed. Because of every conversation I've had, obviously campaigning, I've gone door to door, I've hit hundreds of homes, I've talked to hundreds of parents over the last exhausting week and a half. I can tell you that there's a lot to say. Of the 24 hours of recording that I've done, the word equity has not come up once. I've met with METCO kids, I've met with kids from all ages, both sexes, everybody. I'm not discriminating in any way, and I'd be eager to talk to all of you and get your guys' opinion too.
Absolutely.
So this is another bid to delay this audit. Please delay it. Give us a chance to provide some feedback. There's a team, ad hoc team, that's formed around this to make it a reality. We hope to also include some videos so you guys can actually hear the direct voices of some of the participants in this. Others have wanted to remain anonymous, but that is the goal. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, hi.
Just, my name is Linda Worcester. I'm a Sherborn resident. I have 5 children, 2nd grade through a recently graduated senior. Just a question that might be covered when you go over the equity audit update, but I know this is our chance to speak. Will there be, or does there exist, like a list of references or places that the NYU group has already done equity audits, other school districts, or maybe not Massachusetts, but wherever they've already done this, where that information would be available for interested parents to see what they accomplished in other places. That was just my question, but I know we may not be able to speak beyond this period of time. So I don't know if you're going to address it during the conversation, but
We will be addressed. Is that your comment? Okay, great, thank you.
Question, can people speak twice?
Well, let's just go and, let's go around and, anyone else have? Okay, you'll be the last.
Nancy, we have to do the letters too.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, okay. Actually, you know what, we have a bunch of emails that people sent in that couldn't be here, because it was gonna be on Zoom and then not on, so we're gonna read those.
Absolutely.
And do we want to,
I don't know
start?
if you want to go around, I just
Okay.
dealt them out.
You just,
so,
okay.
yes.
All right, so I'll start down, okay.
Okay. My name is Amy, I'm sorry if I say it wrong. My name is Amy Milliken, and I graduated from Dover-Sherborn in 1987, and my son graduated in 2018. I'm submitting this comment to voice my support for the thoughtful initiatives DS8 has created to grow Dover-Sherborn into a more equitable, anti-racist school system. I support DS8's proposed equity audit. Thank you for taking action to make DS a safer place for all students.
Okay. So I have one, this is from Leanne Galley. Below is my comment for the joint school committee meeting. My name is Leanne Galley and I graduated from Dover-Sherborn in 2019. I'm submitting this comment to voice my support for the thoughtful initiatives DS8 has created to grow Dover-Sherborn into a more equitable, anti-racist school system. I enthusiastically support DS8's proposed equity audit. I was extremely fortunate to have grown up in the DS community, but my experiences with racism in the DS school system reflect the necessity for change. Every school year I was called the wrong name and carelessly mixed up with other Asian students by many teachers and peers. All I could do at the time was to laugh it off and accept their muffled excuses while silently swallowing my embarrassment. While such instances may appear insignificant, experiencing subtle racism in school, a supposedly safe space, is no less damaging and something that I will never forget. During my 4 years at DSHS, I was given only one opportunity to speak up for myself and other students of color, knowing that no change would ensue, but hoping nonetheless. Speaking up in the moment is difficult for many students, as I know it was for me. So I urge you to recognize this call to action for those who cannot share their experiences. Thank you, DS8 and the Dover-Sherborn and regional school committees for taking action to make DS a safer place for all students. Best, Leanne.
Hello, to whom it may concern. My name is Colette Clare, and I graduated from Dover-Sherborn in 2015. I'm submitting this comment to voice my support for the thoughtful initiatives DS8 has created to grow Dover-Sherborn into a more equitable, anti-racist school system. I enthusiastically support DS8's proposed equity audit. I believe it is imperative that DS incorporates a curriculum which incorporates elements of contemporary social issues, racism, and embodies a more equitable and anti-racist theme throughout. This is especially important for the students of a school that already lacks a diverse student body. Within placing such curriculums, students will learn and understand issues that have been embedded in this nation and better recognize injustices that they would not have understood or even learned about until leaving the DS community, which is too late. Thank you, DS8 and the Dover, Sherborn, and regional school committees for taking actions to make DS a safer place for all students. Thank you for taking the time to read my response. Sincerely, Colette Clare.
Dear all, firstly, thank you for your time and consideration on this matter. My name is Alyssa Kelly, and I graduated from DSHS in 2015. I'm reaching out in regards to the school committee meeting this evening. I'm unable to come in person, but nonetheless find this topic of great importance and would like to advocate in support of implementing DS8. As an alum, I believe I hold a unique perspective that neither parents of the community nor current students have. I have successfully graduated from DSHS and entered completely new, different, and more diverse settings, both educationally and professionally. Thus, knowing the lack of preparation, knowledge, and ability that I had back in 2015 to be an informed ally, activist, or simply a civically engaged voter, it is imperative that the community and our schools support the proposed equity audit. The first time I was ever exposed to conversations regarding race, social justice, and allyship was in my first year of college. I am disheartened to know that many of my fellow alums likely experienced the same reality. I was underprepared by DS for these kinds of conversations, interactions, and understandings that were required of me. Additionally, I realized how important it was for me as white, cisgender, and privileged person to be not only present, but listening to strangers, educators, peers, and friends as they discuss their own experiences of discrimination and hate. An encouraging thing I often fall back on is the beauty of discomfort. We desperately try to find places, people, routines, etc. that bring us comfort, but growth can be stunted in these spaces. Many schools, communities, and loved ones strive to build environments of comfort and success for their youth and students. While it's certainly appreciated in many ways, such a commitment for constant comfort or safety becomes complacent, exclusive, and stagnant. When hard conversations and realities are unavoidable, the tools of being comfortable in discomfort are just as imperative, if not more than running a mile and passing an AP exam. I loved DS for its ability to make me feel safe and recognizable to my peers and teachers. I will continue to feel a sense of gratitude for how prepared I was in my college's writing 101, and the notoriety that the hyphen Dover-Sherborn brings in terms of academic prestige. Yet, I acknowledge its faults, and therefore some of my own, in how I viewed the world, interacted with others, and assumed to know realities that were never mine to hold. My question to those who are in opposition or apprehension to DS-8 is, why shouldn't we better prepare our students? Why aren't we considering their futures holistically rather than just academically? Thank you, DS-8 and the Dover-Sherborn and regional school committees for taking action to make DS a safer place for all students. Sincerely, Alyssa Kelly, William Smith College 19, Hobart and William Smith, MAT 20. I actually have another, if everyone already has one signed. My name is Mary Kate Sharon, and I am a 2016 graduate of Dover-Sherborn Schools. I'm writing to express my ardent support of DS-8's mission and proposed initiatives, specifically the upcoming equity audit that will be conducted next school year. I had a pretty charmed experience in the DS school system, but it is clear to me through both things I witnessed in high school and stories I have heard since, that my peers of color were not afforded the same easy existence. I want to see Dover-Sherborn taking active steps to become a more anti-racist system that meets the needs of all its students, not just the highly privileged ones. The proposed equity audit is a good first step towards achieving that aim. I look forward to seeing what other measures our schools will take to make our students of color feel safe, seen, and valued, and to ensure our white students graduate with an understanding of their immense privilege and responsibility to tackle systems of oppression post-grad. Thank you.
Like Sarah, I have two emails to read. The first one is from Lee Tian. She is a Dover resident. She has two questions for the committee. One, she said, I'm seeing a growing student body from diverse backgrounds, the Asian and Pacific Islanders community in particular, which is a great thing in her opinion. I also noticed in this May, the API Heritage Month, there was no discussion around the topic at school or classroom level, limited from my observation, of course. What's the district's plan to accommodate this demographic change in our student body and make sure that everybody's culture is seen and celebrated? And two, the start time for elementary school at 8 a.m. is very early for kids. I understand there are limitations in terms of transportation, etc. Any plan to look into the schedule in the near future? Thank you very much for your attention. Lee Tian, PhD. The second one is from Carolyn Whitaker to the Dover-Sherborn School Committees and Community. My name is Carolyn Whitaker, and I graduated from Dover-Sherborn in 2017. I'm submitting this comment to voice my support for the thoughtful initiatives DS-8 has created to grow Dover-Sherborn into a more equitable, anti-racist school system. I enthusiastically support DS-8's proposed equity audit. I feel particularly compelled to voice my support as a white student, knowing how much students of color have suffered at Dover-Sherborn, and understanding the exhaustion of self-advocacy when it is so often met with the dismissal and condescension, there we go, that was frequent in the school system. Many, if not all, of my black and brown friends have told me about the things they have gone through from kindergarten through senior year, from things such as being consistently mistaken for other students of the same race, to being called derogatory slurs, mocked, and bullied. These students are exhausted of having to defend and explain these aggressions to white staff, who often are uneducated or just plain unsympathetic to how dehumanizing it can be to experience this on a daily basis. No child should be expected to educate faculty on why racist actions are racist, however innocent the actions in question may seem. Every child who goes through the Dover-Sherborn school system deserves the very best chance to succeed, but students of color are set back from the start by having to constantly self-advocate and defend themselves in an environment that has not protected them and has frankly proven detrimental to them. As it stands today, the Dover-Sherborn school system is antithetical to racial equality and equity across the board. It does not support students of color, it does not support LGBTQ+ students, or any otherwise marginalized community. This audit is necessary and overdue. It cannot help the multitudes of past students who have suffered at the hands of DS faculty and students, but it will begin to change the tide for students to come. Thank you, DSA and the Dover-Sherborn and regional school committees for taking action to make DS a safer place for all students. Carolyn Whitaker.
I have two as well, so I'll start with this one first. This is from Alexis Madison. She is a Sherborn resident from Snow Street. As an advocate for the LGBTQ+ community, I was gladdened to hear of the work of DSA and felt further supported by the possibility of an equity audit within the district. Through the audit, I hope to bring to light opportunities for improvement as it relates to transgender issues. While this is something unique to my family's experience at school, it is sure to impact someone else's. Sometimes we don't know what we don't know unless we ask the tough questions. Be good today. My next one is from Kathleen Oregon Dye, and I'm going to read it as it was emailed to me. Statement to be read at Dover-Sherborn Regional School Committee. I'm unable to attend due to mask mandate and running a live Zoom meeting for another group. To the Dover-Sherborn Regional School Committee, Dover and Sherborn School Committees. I am deeply concerned that the recently approved equity statement is being voted on to be printed into the handbook of every child in the middle and high school. It was only approved by the school committee members, not the entire community. The equity statement was created and derived from a 42-member task force that did not include a diversity of voices from the community. Even though there are students, parents, administrators, alumnus, and teachers on that current task force, they do not represent a diverse group of opinions or experiences. Only yesterday, after asking for months, were other community members told they could join DSA, and they will, me included. The 42-person task force only has 12 parents, 28%, whose children will be directly impacted by any equity audits that are done. The other 30 do not. Because a diverse group of voices were not represented nor heard on this committee, I am asking that the equity statement be put on hold and not approved for printing in the newest version of the student handbook. Once a few new members and voices are on the DSA committee and have had a chance to review the equity statement and make additions or suggestions, then we could put it back to a vote in September. There is no urgent reason why this equity statement needs to be in the handbooks in the first place. It can be added at any time or can be posted elsewhere as it already is on the DSA website. It's too impactful to be done hastily. Secondly, the equity audit itself was also only approved by the same group, which does not represent all voices, opinions, backgrounds, experiences of Dover-Sherborn parents, students, alumni. The parameters of the equity audit focus almost exclusively on race, even though in the April 6th school committee meeting, parents/residents were assured by Beth McCoy, Assistant Superintendent, that the audit would be, quote, about much more than race, end quote. The audit needs to contain more parameters around the mental health, in parentheses, depression, OCD, suicide prevention, eating disorders, bullying, emotional, social, physical, anti-Semitism, both overt and non-overt, special needs, autism spectrum, Down syndrome, learning disabilities, dyslexia, hearing or vision issues, etc., and numerous other special needs. Distinctions which are present in the DS community and school system, including social, emotional, and physical issues, academic pressures to keep up, not to feel marginalized if you're not in all honors classes, etc. The equity audit must address more than just race as we are promised. Race is an important issue, but it's not the only issue, and many would argue that it's not the most pressing issue. There have been numerous suicides and drug overdoses in the town of Dover and Sherborn, not only from recent students, but also students and parents and former students, alumni, all of whom were Caucasian. In addition to this, there are also students, current and graduated, who have substance abuse problems, and other females who have also been approached for nudes from fellow students via social media. These are all serious issues that must be addressed, and because of this, it is clear we have many more issues than just race. Clearly, we have many more issues than just race, and because a diverse group of voices were not heard on the DS8 committee, the equity statement and parameters for the equity audit are not representative of the DS community, parents, students, alumni, and educators. For these important reasons, I asked for 1, a delay in the equity statement being published onto the school handbooks, and 2, the equity audit being given the green light to start in September. We have time to get this right and get buy-in from all community members, not just a very small segment of the community. It's very important to note that many members, 30 of the 42, 72% on the task force, do not have children in our school system. In fact, approximately only 12 of the 42 members even have children in our school system. Therefore, any changes that are made based on the equity audit sanctioned by this task force will not affect their children or them directly, as it is the rest of us in the community whose children are enrolled or will be enrolled very soon. We need more representation. Signed, Kathleen Horgan Dye. She's a Sherborn resident, parent of 2 children that are not represented in the current equity audit, active school and community member, volunteer and fundraiser, CSA board member for 4 years, Girl Scout troop leader for 4 years of 34 girls, former DSHS PTO secretary, former FOPA secretary, former Metco Friends host and fundraiser, former homeroom parent, Pine Hill students / senior citizen bridge program, former key auction committee member raising over $220,000, public relations volunteer, PTO, CSA, Girl Scouts, drama program, teachers lounge makeover chair.
Comment for joint school committee meeting from Olivia Adams, to whom it may concern. My name is Olivia Adams, and I graduated from Dover-Sherborn in 2018. I'm submitting this comment to voice my support for the thoughtful initiatives DSA has created to grow Dover-Sherborn into a more equitable, anti-racist school system. I enthusiastically support DSA's proposed equity audit. If DS aspires to prepare its students for the future, it must teach its students the past, and not just some whitewashed, nicely refined, or comfortable version of the past. Thank you, DS8 and the Dover-Sherborn and regional school committees for taking action to make DS a safer place for all students.
Comment for joint school committee meeting. My name is Brett Milliken, and I graduated from Dover-Sherborn in 2018. I'm submitting this comment to voice my support for the thoughtful initiative DS8 has created to grow Dover-Sherborn into a more equitable, anti-racist school system. I enthusiastically support DS8's proposed equity audit. There is nothing that could help Dover-Sherborn more than this proposed audit. The attitude regarding race and equality at DS has always been an issue, and in my time at DS, I was disgusted by the behavior I witnessed and heard from my fellow students. This was apparent from elementary through high school. Through all those years, I consistently saw students of color excluded, ignored, mocked, taunted, and bullied. From what I've heard since graduating, it seems that things may have become even worse with both students and, parentheses, especially in parentheses, parents actively working to keep the school the way it is rather than accepting necessary change. People I've talked to about DS outside of the community are horrified to hear about the casually racist, prejudiced, and exclusionary atmosphere of the school. This is no secret either. This is the school's reputation. People I've met in college who know of DS already are aware of these issues and immediately begin asking about it. It's a huge issue within the student body and greater community, and without active measures, it will only get worse. This audit and incentive will help not only the students, but parents as well. Children are not born racist, and what I witnessed starting in elementary school only proves that the parents of DS need to put in some work. Dover-Sherborn is stuck deep in the past. It's time that something is done to keep it from being this way any longer. This is why those oh so precious school rankings are dropping. DS has the potential to be a fantastic school but as long as the issue of the school and community's racist attitudes is not addressed, the school will continue to flounder and suffer from the reputation it has earned. As it stands right now, I would never dream of sending a child into the DS school system. Thank you, DS8 and the Dover, Sherborn, and Regional School Committees for taking action to make DS a safer place for all students.
I have one also from a class of 2017 grad, Alyssa Kelly. By not allowing your child to be taught about essential matters such as racial diversity and historical injustices, you are causing your child to lag behind their peers. This gap in working knowledge and empathy becomes especially apparent when your child goes to college. In college, your child will not know how to interact with peers of color, and their ignorance, which you as parents have created, will set them apart negatively. Other schools in Massachusetts and across the country are implementing courses about race, and by not having a comparable education in this critical area, DS students are specifically disadvantaged and are less prepared as they embark on their journeys outside of DS. Additionally, Carol Lang and I conducted a survey of former DS students regarding increasing enrollment in Facing History, a high school course that prioritizes education on historical injustice, race, and constructively discussing difficult topics. The survey resulted in over 60 students with representation from the classes of 2020 through 2000, supporting Facing History being made mandatory, complete with a number of passionate statements. Through both the survey responses and postings on social media after George Floyd was murdered last year, we have learned that as a community, DS students want this education and felt ill-equipped to have conversations about these difficult topics after leaving Dover-Sherborn. DS alumni are the closest you have to your child's feedback once they've left the DS bubble, and this wider perspective is truly what we want. By preventing this work, despite your intentions, you are actively disadvantaging your children, not only now while they are in school, but for years to come.
I have a letter from Caleb Dolan, I believe it's a Sherborn resident. Our family wants to thank the DS leadership and schools for the extraordinary effort it took to deliver safe in-person instruction this year. We also want to thank students, alumni for the work the district is doing to create a diverse and inclusive environment that will lead all our graduates being stronger and healthier members of a diverse nation. This work is challenging and requires confronting painful realities about history, current events, and our own community. The Dover-Sherborn students and alumni I have encountered on the DS Aid Committee and in the community want to be prepared for the world. They want to make the world a better place, for the world, and they want to make the world a better place. They are willing and hungry for honest and challenging conversations and content. They don't want to be spoon-fed a sugar-coated version of America or develop a flimsy and artificial sense of self. The majority of our community's parents and our students want Dover-Sherborn grads to enter the world excited by its diversity and able to work across racial and cultural lines. However, in our community, you hear parroted words of white supremacists uttered in opposition to any effort to change. They may claim that AID's work is an attempt to indoctrinate students in a radical mindset. This is an important moment for you as a board. These are neighbors and perhaps friends. We are biased to be polite and frame this as an honest conversation with two sides. That is not the case. Historical injustices and current inequities are thoroughly documented. BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, students and alumni have barely recounted their experiences in our schools. We hope the board will choose to value humanity of all students, families, and staff over the comfort of a few. We hope the board will choose to prepare our students to be part of a multiracial, multicultural, messy democracy, striving to get better rather than to teach them to be afraid. Many thanks, Caleb Dolan.
Hi, my name is Soph Sharon, and I graduated from Dover-Sherborn in 2018. I'm submitting this comment to voice my support for the thoughtful initiatives DS Aid has created to grow Dover-Sherborn into a more equitable, anti-racist school system. I enthusiastically support DS Aid's proposed equity audit. As an education studies student at Middlebury College, I've been privileged enough to undertake courses based in critical race theory and culturally responsive pedagogy. These courses have been formative to my understanding of the United States and inclusion, and I believe it is imperative that students are exposed to these ideas from the earliest point possible to encourage thoughtful and inclusive behavior. When I was a student at Dover-Sherborn, there were numerous instances of white supremacy-fueled hate, such as the vandalism of bathrooms with swastikas. This work is long overdue at DS. Thank you, DS8 and the Dover-Sherborn and Regional School Committees for taking action to make DS a safer place for all students. Best, so.
Great, thank you. This concludes public comments. Thank you, everyone who shared via email or who stood up and shared their opinion or had questions today. I'd like to turn it over now to Andrew for the superintendent update.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for the comments. Thank you to our school committee members for reading those comments under these unusual circumstances. It's greatly appreciated. As you know, in my update report, I mentioned, of course, the equity audit. I'm sure that people saw that online, and that triggered some of this discussion. I want to just say, for the record, this effort to make Dover-Sherborn a more equitable school system started with me. I heard it through my entry meetings that people felt this was a priority. It went into the strategic plan because people here, not me, people here said it needs to be looked at. Only through time did we see just how deeply people felt about that. We started to hear from kids. We started with the hashtag #WeAreDS initiative. We had an assembly a few years back because there was racist graffiti on the bathroom walls. There were sticky labels with the N-word on it. There were kids doing the Sig Heil at games, salute. There were kids chanting Shabbat Shalom to the lone Jewish kid on the football team. There were kids referring to Medway as Spedway. There were kids making fun of the weight of the Medway cheerleaders. These are Dover-Sherborn kids. I went here. I too am an alumni. I went here, I saw it myself, I knew this was an issue, and it didn't surprise me one bit when I came in and I heard it in my entry interviews. And you damn well better believe I put it in that strategic plan. So it's there because I really believe that this is an issue for our system. We just heard it from the mouths of babes, as my mother would say. How many kids just said that? My own children have said it. I've been here for 50 years. Yes, this is a difficult conversation. It's a difficult thing for us as Dover-Sherborn to acknowledge that we might actually have a challenge. It's not our strength. It's never been our strength. We all carry that. We hate to admit that we've got any problems whatsoever. And I'm not saying this is a huge problem. I'm just saying that it's something that, as a system, we would benefit from asking the people who go here, what's your experience like? And if, in fact, people say to us, after we interview as many people, we really cover the place, if they say there isn't a problem here, then so be it. But I know that that's not going to happen. They're going to say we could improve. We could educate our students better about issues of diversity and race and our history as a country. We could do a better job. Not that we're failing, but we could do a better job with that. We could do a better job of acknowledging that sometimes we perpetuate issues. I'll give you an example of how I've seen that in my former district as a high school principal. Somebody brought the question to me as the Wellesley High School principal, why are so many students underrepresented in honors or AP classes? In fact, if you go into a CP class, oftentimes it will often just be the students who are African American. Amanda was on the staff when this conversation came up. And what we did was we looked at it and we realized not one student, one African American student had been nominated or recommended for an honors level class, moving from 8th grade to 9th grade. That's institutional. You can't tell me that genetically those kids aren't capable. We, along the way, created a system somehow, somewhere, and I'm not pointing the finger at anyone, I'm not pointing it at the teachers or the parents or the society, I'm just saying that somewhere along the line, something happened. And you can trace it back, folks. Do the research. You can trace it back. Those achievement gaps begin very, very early. So I think that the point of the equity audit is to ask an outside organization. You can't get a more respected organization than NYU to come out and ask those important questions. Why that is threatening to anyone, I do not know. That is puzzling to me. Why would that be threatening? Just to ask the questions? That to me is actually really scary. We just want to know the truth. What are people's experiences here? What are our students' experiences here? What are our families' experiences here? I'm going to put you on the spot, Beth, but we did survey families in Dover. We looked into the numbers. What were how many languages do you remember were spoken in Dover? Do you remember that?
Well, I think it was system-wide, there was over 60.
Okay, think about that. So all we're saying is that it is time for us as a school system to look ourselves in the mirror and ask, is there anything we could be doing better? Because honestly, I'm retiring, you know that, right? I'm at the point now where I'm starting to think, if I lost one kid, because I didn't do enough work in this regard, I can't live with that. That's unacceptable to me. That's the kind of thing that will go to my grave. So I feel really strongly about it. I know you know how I feel about it. I'm so proud of us. I'm proud of us. I've been here for 50 years. We've never had this conversation, folks, ever. And if we have, I'd like to know about it. I'm telling you, it's never happened. We're having the conversation, and it's about time. And it's appropriate. Just to be clear so people understand, because there's been some misinformation, there isn't a group of people who are funding this, like some kind of political PAC that's funding this initiative. We have funds that are available that can be used at our discretion, the administration's discretion, for things like this. Grant money, and we are, in fact, taking a portion of $30,000 out of unrestricted gift money. We are using $30,000 from the METCO grant, and we are using from all three districts $15,000 of Title IV money. That totals $75,000. We went through a very lengthy process, a request for proposals, because we knew the cost was such that we had to honor the law, and we did. We went through a very lengthy process of requesting proposals, of vetting the possible organizations that came forward. We made absolutely sure, 100% sure, that they understood that this isn't strictly about race. I don't know how many times I can say that. When we started this from the very beginning, it wasn't strictly about race. It was about making sure that and so when somebody asked, what is equity? I'll give a definition. Making sure that every single student feels as if they have a right to be here and feels valued, regardless of their background or identity or anything else. That includes poverty, that includes homelessness, divorce, alcoholism, whatever issues that the kids come with, they should feel as if they're valued here. We do look at data, folks. We do look at data. We have data from our kids from 2 years ago where 20% of the kids said there wasn't an adult that they could turn to in the event of an emergency. 20%. We have 660 kids. That's a lot of kids who don't have one adult. That's very telling information. So we've got some meaty data from these kids. We just heard it tonight. And I'm so glad that folks actually wrote to us. Life is funny the way things turn out, and we end up with all this feedback, because it was important that it had to be read, and we heard from a lot of people. So I will take the responsibility for pushing this, but all I did was really light the fire. It was you guys right here, this school committee, that said, run with it. You guys wanted the Diversity and Equity Inclusion Task Force, and we did it. Beth has been absolutely instrumental in helping lead that process and chair that process. As the superintendent, you can't always chair every task force, and she stepped up and did it. It was wide open, by the way. Anyone could be on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force. There was not some kind of selective process where we said, oh wait, that person's political beliefs are such. We don't know what they are, frankly. anyone could have been on it and they still can. There's nothing saying, there's no, that I know of, a policy or anything that says you can't be on this. So the people who happen to come forward are people who feel passionately about this, but apparently there are other people who feel passionately about it who didn't come forward, and maybe they should. Because I do think that these forums and these conversations are important. If we haven't learned anything, and I'll leave it at this, if we haven't learned anything, we've learned in the past 4 years that big challenges, start times, special education review, equity audit, discussions about race, professional development around these kinds of issues, they are tough. And people need to hear over and over and over why we're doing what we're doing. Because otherwise, in the vacuum, people will make things up. We started this with good intent, and we're going to finish it with good intent. And I have complete faith that that's going to be the case. This has been a great training for Kathleen. We are passionate. You said that yourself.
That's right.
We are passionate. Your timing is actually excellent, because this is something that obviously we put a lot of time and energy into. So I don't know if you have questions about the process. I tried to cover everything. We are making sure that the RFP, so the request for proposals, that all of that is on the DS-AID website. Is it on there now, Beth?
It is.
Yes. And the audit proposal and the audit budget,
Yes.
which explains how they are planning to spend the money on this work. So this is a really deep dive. It's conversations with us. It's reviewing how we, even literally looking at the walls of our schools. What do we say? Some of the feedback that I've received through the years has been like, you'll have like a Black History Month, but once it's over, boy, that's the end of it. We can probably do better than that. And I think that that's probably going to come up. That would be my prediction. But I certainly will answer any questions in this regard before I move on to the next topic, which will be quick.
Thanks, Andrew, and thank you for your sage words. I really appreciate them. What's the timing? How of this audit? How will that work? Do we have a timeline yet?
We do. So it's supposed to, I'm going to have to lean on Beth on this because I think she knows it better than I, but I know that they want to initially get started this summer. We had hoped, quite honestly, for them to be able to come and introduce themselves, and that would have been a piece of cake on Zoom. Not so easy in person. So that's really unfortunate. I do recommend that you have the folks from NYU in early on in the school year so that they can give a broader overview of what they're doing. People can read it. It's online, but what would you say about the timeline, Beth?
So, assuming that we need a little time to get back into our rhythm in September will kick off. They're going to be asking for a district-wide multi-stakeholder group to help advise them. So what you see in the RFP was the beginning point to get bidders to come in and say, to see if bidders were interested in the work. And now we can go back and refine it to make sure that it is about more than race, and that if we need to add more language around disabilities or homelessness or religion, we can do that too. They will then take that information and they will create, with the support of that team, surveys that will go out to students, educators, families, community members. From the survey results, then they will create questions that they will then break out into focus groups, again, across all stakeholder groups, K through 12. They'll come back with initial findings and make sure that, the sense that they're making from the patterns seems realistic to the people who are living them. And they'll have an initial report probably in early 2022. And then they will continue to refine the data because there will be a lot of it. And we're hoping to have a report, if not in June 2022, then when we return the following September. That will be obviously shared with all of you to then be shared with the community.
And will they, we're not looking for recommendations, or are we, or what product will we be getting from them? If you know, you may not know, or I don't know who I should be.
We will get recommendations, no question about it. whether we accept those
Yeah.
recommendations is another story. But if they're going to spend the amount of time and do the in-depth study that they're proposing to do, I think that those recommendations will hold a lot of weight.
So if I could just clarify too, Andrew, to your point, yes, they're going to make recommendations, but again, the strategic plan is usually, you know, a compilation of work from the superintendent listening to all community members, and it's ultimately for you to adopt. So if there are recommendations in there that the community doesn't agree with, that doesn't mean that they have to go forward. And I know to one of the earlier questions, yes, in the RFP that's posted on the website, there are other districts that are listed that have used NYU, both urban, suburban, public, private schools.
And just to reiterate, we did actually, in the interview process, make sure it was crystal clear to them that this was a broad scope and looking at all of the challenges that kids might face, not just issues of race, but all of the challenges that kids might face. We're a competitive place, and we know that the kids are going to say, you know, sometimes I feel awkward, or let's face it, some of our students are awkward. It's in any school system. How can we make those kids feel more supported? One of the things, remember, in the strategic plan that came up was people were saying they left. They actually came to see me to tell me they left and pulled their kids, which was amazing. A lot of families. And the question naturally was, why? My kid couldn't make it here. I think that that's a talent drain, frankly. So I think that that's something that hopefully will be discovered by this. I don't know, but those kinds of, I think that actually, in fact, I do know that they will in fact speak with families who've pulled out of the system to inquire as to why.
Oh, sorry, you, okay, thanks. Once again, I don't know who to address this to. I'm wondering how we will handle making sure that there is adequate communication out so that first families, students, alums can all keep track if there's opportunities to volunteer or to be in touch, and then the progress and the outcomes, and then if there's time to, or maybe forums to discuss so that people really feel invested in the process.
That's a really, really, really important point. They reported to us that they make it as detailed a process as can be, as inclusive a process as can be. But can you speak to more specifics about that, Beth?
Sure, and I think that it was part of our last conversation with them that this is a priority for all of us, so thank you for bringing that up. They are going to work with us, the leadership team, this summer, and Kathy to come up with our initial ideas. Again, they'll have a multi-stakeholder group to help guide them, but we have given them some context about our district. They got to meet, you know, various members through the interview process. They've done their research online, and they realized that making sure that all of the voices are included and communicated with is super important, and we're hoping to rely on their experience to some extent. Having done this before with small districts, big districts, of course, you know, Kathy will guide that work as well with her experience. But certainly we'll make sure that that's top priority.
And not just conversations, also looking at the data. So looking at the data about suspensions, looking at the data of grades, of who's in our AP honors and CP classes, looking at all that kind of data, it's very telling. If you haven't ever looked at the Youth Risk Behavior Survey data, you really should. That is just rich in information about what our kids are feeling about life, about school. And I would argue that it's quite positive. Dover-Sherborn's kids are doing very, very well. But if 1 or 2 are not doing well, if 10 are not doing well, that's concerning. So we will get a lot of data. They will plow through that data. At least that's my expectation based on what we heard from them.
I just had a question. I was really grateful that we had student voices here tonight, and maybe I misheard the situation, but I wanted to make sure while we're still on the topic that Praisha got a chance to speak again. I don't know if we covered your question or your comment, but I don't know if that's okay. But I thought we were going to circle back to her, so I just wanted to make sure we did that.
We can, we went so long with the comments, but sure.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I think I just wanted to, oh, well, I guess he's also gone. I guess I just wanted to say that, you know, in response to a call for the audit to wait until we get feedback, I think I wanted to emphasize that it is coming because we got feedback. I know that, I have been providing feedback since I left, if that's any indication. Moreover, there was an open letter that went around last year when George Floyd was murdered, and it was signed by pages and pages and pages of alumni. That one.
And
that
actually, they were concerned about me not doing enough.
They were concerned, and I think that Dr. Keogh has stepped up to the plate, frankly. I will also be very clear, in conversations that I have had with administration and conversations that I have had with white members of this community, I have expressed my cynicism, and that has not been met with anything other than acceptance. You know, the people that I have spoken to are reminding me that the reason that alumni are concerned and bringing these concerns are not because we're disappointed, it's because we believe we can do better. I mean, I wouldn't be sitting here if I didn't think that what I had to say would you know, if it means something. That's why I'm here. I'm here because I know that what I have to say and my experiences mean something. If to anybody, even if it's meaning something to one person, that's enough for me. Because I have other things to do with my time. But I'm here, you know, I'm here to talk about what I dealt with. My friends were here to talk about what they saw me and their other friends deal with. You know, I've maintained connections with people who care. There are people who care in this district, myself included, people who aren't just people of color, people who have daughters, who have gay children, who have lesbian children, who have trans children, people whose daughters have been approached for nudes on social media, people whose daughters have, you know, been made fun of for their weight. This equity audit is meaning to cover everything. People care. We're doing this because we care, and I don't think that anybody wants anything other than the betterment of every single child in this district. I almost didn't, you know, I almost didn't put my voice, and I almost said, screw it, I don't want to. But my brother goes here, and I care about him, and I care about his friends, and I care about every single kid in that grade, and I care about every single kid in the school, and I know that all anybody wants is for everything to feel better, and for, like you said, every single kid to feel valued here. I know I didn't, and I don't think I would be okay knowing that my brother doesn't, or any of his friends don't, or any of the other children don't. If they feel the same things that I felt, I would feel that I didn't, you know, fulfill my duty as an alumni, as somebody who went here. If anything, Dover-Sherborn taught me better. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Andrew, are you still?
Oh, yes, so, I don't feel as passionate about the other points in my update. I'm a little tired of talking about the pandemic, but you saw, obviously, I'm certainly very proud of us here, this body, the community, our staff, our students. The fact that we were able to do what we did this year as well as we did is something that's always going to be a point of pride for me. I wanted to point out, for those who have questions at home, people want to know what it's going to look like next year. I know that that Superintendent Smith will know more as the summer progresses. We'll get guidance from the Department of Ed. The commissioner does check in pretty regularly, including today, and that we'll have a real sense. But thus far, it looks like next year will be a regular year for the most part. The question of masks in the school, I think, has to still be fleshed out, because what happens at the high school or the middle school versus what happens at the elementary schools, depending on vaccination, could be very different. So masks are a big question. I think people will have questions about, you know, the distancing, the transportation. Will we be able to have the large-scale inside events? Are we still going to have pool testing? So there's a lot we just don't know. We do know that the expectation from the state is that we will not have remote students. So people who do not want to send their kids to school will probably have to homeschool them or try to get into TECA or one of the other online organizations. We do know that. Beth's going to speak about silver linings, because there are some possibilities, right? We learned a lot about remote learning, and so there are some things that we may be able to implement. I do want to thank publicly one more time, ad nauseum, I'm sure, the health and hygiene folks. Seriously, Jill Fedor, our lead nurse, Matt Vitale, Matt Beavers, Kay Peterson, Alexi Boudreau, Matt from Sherburne, and Kay and Alexi from Dover. Let me just put it this way. Dover and Sherburne's boards of health have not always seen eye to eye. And they needed to for this pandemic, and they did, thanks in large part to these folks, which allowed us to make good decisions. So a real tip of the hat to them. And then just finally, the Sustainability Task Force. We will have new leadership for the Sustainability Task Force. Dawn Vittori, I don't know if it was the guilt or because I was leaving and she wanted to do something nice for me, but has agreed to step into the role as the co-chair of the Sustainability Task Force with 10th grade student Angela Lind, who is just phenomenal. Just a great kid. We want to continue, obviously, with participation from school committee members and from the community, and most importantly, from kids. You've heard me say it before, but one of the best things about that is that kids have to take leadership roles in that, and it's really yielded some fruit, not the least of which being Kathleen Whittle, who, when we started this, she was quiet and bashful. And she's now, to see her proudly kind of taking charge and leading on that committee and really finding her voice now, leaving high school. It took me until I was about 25. So kudos to her. She's doing great. So that was it for my report. I'm sorry I was so long-winded.
That's great. Thanks, Andrew. Sheila, oh, sorry.
Yeah, I have a question. Has there been any thought or any feedback from DESE about, I hate even saying the words, requiring students to be vaccinated when they come back to school? I know, my bet is there's probably controversy over it. And like, for example, the EEOC has said that employers can require employees to be vaccinated, but that's a totally different thing because it's private versus a public school. You know, I'm just looking for information, if you guys have heard anything, whether we're thinking about that.
I mean, I've heard the conversation come up, but I haven't heard anything definitive in terms of guidance.
The only thing that we were told today in a call with the commissioner is obviously that is a discussion out there.
Okay.
There are districts reaching out, asking if that is a possibility. Other districts, not so much. So they are looking for legal guidance at both the state and the DESE level.
So is DESE, the only reason, the concern I have is that if DESE is gonna tell us, in some strong way we should be doing this, we need lead time, obviously. Because I remember how torturous the issue of timing was last summer. That's all I have.
That to me is a concern, because I think that I'm hearing from superintendents is that it may end up being a district decision.
Oh, sorry.
That's possible. So I think that's what people are worried about.
Yeah.
Would be much easier if the state would just say it's this or the other. It's what they do with other vaccines. So, but we just don't know right now. I think that pressure is on them. I think they know that. They mentioned it today.
Correct. Thank you.
Sorry, quickly on that note, and this is sort of for both of you. Last summer, Kathy, we had lots of school committee meetings as a way to inform the community. And it was huge attendance, as Andrew referred to. Is that something that maybe will happen this summer, although not every other week as we did this past year, as a way for parents to also be able to ask questions rather than just get an email?
So that's, we have definitely not processed that.
Okay,
Other than her, yes, I know, and well, I'll just say, it did prove very helpful in terms of families feeling as if they knew what was going on. If we had a school committee meeting with if there was an update, say, and last year we needed them almost on a weekly basis. I don't think you would need that, but I hate to say it, but you might need a meeting or two this summer. But I leave that up to our new superintendent.
I'm certainly open to, communication is obviously important, especially during this time. Today on the phone call, my takeaway was it was business as usual, with the caveat that they are going to watch, what happens, during these summer months. They're working very closely, again, with the state public health officials, so I'm sure we will be informed. There were a lot of questions asked about the vaccines, about determinations about masks. So if I'm interpreting that today, it was the distancing will be gone. That will not be a requirement. At this point here, even with summer programs, they were talking about masks being encouraged, but not mandated. They were talking about September, the possibility that masks, again, would not be required, to open up the schools. So there were a lot of questions out there. You asked about meetings. I'm certainly available to sit when I can get in here July 1st. And we do have a summer conference coming up, I believe, the week of July 12th, which is usually a very good conference. It is about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm sure there will be conversations about opening up in September. Everything from, again, what does it look like in September to unfinished learning. A lot of those were discussions really left today to be continued.
And one thing Kathy will get quickly is the link into the text group of the area superintendents, and it is a very capable group of people. And they are in the know. Some of them are involved in kind of the conversations with the state government, and they serve in higher level positions in the Mass Association of Superintendents. So they know, they're in the know. At that meeting, a lot will come out, and then you can come back and stay informed. But I liked the ability for us to Zoom last year. I will say that having that as an option is a great way to communicate with large numbers of people. They didn't have to show their face, they could just come on and listen. It was really effective. It was the first time in my career, I think, that I got a compliment for being a good communicator from parents today. So, but that was why, because they could come in and listen.
Thank you, Andrew.
Okay, so thank you. I have two topics tonight. One is an update on the strategic plan, and the other is the silver linings. So we're gonna zoom out from where we've been for the last hour to the 30,000-foot view of the last 4 years. I asked Andrew yesterday when we finally finished updating the document, all of the leaders weighed in to make sure we had all of the progress. And I said, are you gonna hang this on your refrigerator for Chris to see? And he said, no, I'm gonna get it tattooed. I said, even better. But just as a reminder of what our vision is and our goal as a district, which is in the report, is we will distinguish ourselves through innovative teaching and learning experiences that inspire all students to pursue their individual passion for learning and excellence while we continue to be a nationally recognized, highly performing school system. So that has been and always will be our goal. Through the strategic planning process and Andrew interviewing many people across all stakeholder groups, we established 5 buckets of improvement. One is innovative teaching and learning. The second is health and well-being of students and staff. Third, partnerships with families and the community. 4 is safe and innovative facilities. And 5 is resource efficiencies. So if we look at if we look at the big boulders that have moved in the last 4 years, we've established core values as a district. We've conducted a security audit, which has upgraded the facilities and made our spaces safer for students and staff. We conducted a special education audit, and we reorganized some of the staff and administrators within the special education program and added additional programs. We have more social emotional support in this district and special education support for children than we ever did, thanks to that work. The We Are DS initiative, bringing us together as a community and addressing issues of cultural responsiveness. We've developed a draft portrait of a graduate, which is almost ready to go into print based on feedback from everyone. We've split the start times and we'll continue to keep an eye on that to make sure it's meeting our intended goals. K-8, we have a 1-to-1 initiative. I mean, we talked about last year doing 6-to-8. Wow, boom, overnight, K-8, 1-to-1. And lots of great applications and programs that our teachers are using to bring learning alive and make it more engaging for kids. Google Classroom is being used 3 through 12 almost seamlessly and streamlined and systematically, which is fantastic. We have lots of innovative furniture that is ready to come out of those storage bins and be used again, thanks to DSCF. We've had trips to Finland and High Tech High, which have inspired our work around innovation and student-centered learning, so much to celebrate. Those are the big ones. Then we can get into the details of the pebbles, just to name a few. We have now AP Computer Science at the high school. We have a new financial literacy course, which we had over 130 people want to sign up for next year. So we promised the seniors and the juniors can get it the next time around. Our FLES students, our foreign language at the elementary level in Spanish, they are rising 8th graders. So the high school is getting ready. Those kids are getting older. We have more recess and playtime and downtime and reflection time, K through 12 than ever. Our middle school and high school schedules have shifted to be a little bit less crazy, a little less bell-oriented with a flex block to allow for advisories. And we have literacy specialists at both elementary schools. So those are some of the smaller pebbles. And then there are the things that weren't on this list that you need to add before you put it on the fridge. The Sustainability Task Force, so thank you to Andrew for leading that work and Dawn for picking it up. The Pine Hill Emergency Road came up 30 years later and we've gotten that done. And biggest and most importantly not on the list was the pandemic. And we have successfully survived that thanks to Andrew's leadership and all of everybody in both villages coming together to support the kids. So lots to celebrate. So in terms of next step, Kathy, we're going to give you a copy of this, and this is your roadmap moving forward. Things to focus on this year, which you're well aware of and have already started the conversations with Andrew, and you've picked up on them through the interview process, is making sure that we have a successful return to school after the pandemic, focusing on social and emotional wellness of everyone, that unfinished learning, and hopefully uninterrupted learning next year, incorporating the silver linings into our work moving forward. Education doesn't have to look the same as it did 2 years ago. Revisiting the start times and just starting to collect data so we can make informed decisions moving forward. Continuing our work around cultural responsiveness and interventions for kids, which you've heard mentioned a few times tonight. So it'll be your choice whether or not you would like Ms. Smith to update this next year, or if you just wanted to keep it going and leave it for the next permanent superintendent. But it's updated and ready to rock and roll today, July 1st, or in September. So that's agenda item number 1. I don't know if there's any questions.
No wonder I'm so tired.
I guess first I want to say thank you to you and to Andrew and to all the Dawn and all the people that did all those things, because you lose track of the things, and that was a nice summary, and reading the strategic plan, a reminder that you've been doing a lot of really good work, so thank you so much for all of that. I am trying to clarify, it seems like from the strategic plan, even though technically the date was to wrap it up, that there are still to-dos on the to-do list. So if we were to decide to continue this on and then reform it with the new superintendent, that we wouldn't be losing a strategic. It's not like we'd be floating around without a mission.
No, we have our goals set for next year for the most part. The schools have already developed their school improvement plans based on the district goals, which you've all approved through your private meetings. And it was interesting in updating this, I had the conversation of what's the difference between in progress versus ongoing. And I think there is a difference. A lot of these things are going to be ongoing, either for the next 10 years or forever, because they're the basis of just evolution in education. So plenty to work on.
So this is not something we have to vote.
No, I mean, my suggestion to you would be, Kathy knows she's got a great team. They're all pulling in the same direction, which is a hugely important thing that doesn't come up in any of this, but they are all pulling in the same direction. And that is a beautiful thing for the school system. So we don't have all sorts of weird school improvement plans that have goals that have nothing to do with each other. I think that it would be prudent for you to work on those ongoings. The equity audit itself is going to be a lot of work. There are some things in there, the communications, remember we had the communications committee get to the point of saying we need a new website, and Ann was on that, and we do. But that's still incomplete. there are lots of things in there that you can see based on this report where we still have room to grow and improve. So my suggestion would be that you allow the new superintendent coming in to do his or her own entry, and on the basis of that, see if there's anything that's missing, really dramatically missing from this. I think we identified some of the real big challenges, but there might be a few, because it will have been 5 years, that need to be added.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's sort of what I was hoping, and I guess I would go on record as saying that I would love it if we could continue on this good work, because I feel like school systems are like cruise ships, and we've got a lot of like momentum behind this work and some unfinished business. And I guess it's reminding me, for those of us that have been here for a while, that there were a number of years before you arrived where there was zero strategic plan. There was no plan, and how important that was when we went through the interview process to hire you, and how much of a big difference it has made to the work that the schools have been doing in the last 4 years, and really appreciate that.
Well,
So thank you.
one of the nice things about this transition that I learned from Kathy is that she's gone through the same kind of training I have on strategic planning and how your entry leads to strategic plans. So this isn't gonna be a lost year. That's the beauty of
It's
this.
important to us.
Very important.
Can I really quickly add to that, though? Also, I think one of the beauty of this is that it was designed to be a living document. And so it's actually serving us very well because of the pandemic. We were able to sort of start and stop and figure out what needed to be done, and then we can continue on without losing the year. So that was part of the plan from the beginning, so I appreciate that even more now than I did when you were originally doing it.
There was a method to the madness, but it wasn't my idea. It comes out of that new superintendent induction program, which is, in my mind, really, really excellent. Is making use of your entry to actually lead to the goals for the system. It used to be you just go through the entry process and find out, hey, how's everybody feeling about the place? Now you actually find out that information and turn it into the goals for the system. It's really practical. And we added the action steps. I mean, the action plans and reporting out on the action plans. That's unique, I think, to DS, and I think that's been really good.
I probably should know the answer to this, but to what extent does the strategic plan fit into the equity audit itself? I know it's an item on the strategic plan, but is the audit going to include a review of our strategic plan?
That's a great question. It could, to make sure that, we do have multiple voices and perspectives. I think that's a great idea. And I think that, whether it's Ms. Smith or the permanent superintendent, we'll take this living document, which will be updated, another 12 months from now, and recommendations from the equity audit that you all agree with, and meld them together. So I think, even though it's mentioned in here to work on We Are DS and cultural responsiveness and equity for kids, we'll have another layer to that coming out of the audit.
You could determine, I think it really dovetails nicely with the teaching and learning piece and with the SEL piece, but you could make it its own column, because there will be recommendations out of that, I think, or certainly ideas of things that we could double down on.
I see your role listed as on a lot of these rows. I would suggest that's a problem, but I guess I'd ask you guys to look at thinking about, is that too much for one person to be a point person on, or maybe define what does point person mean? I'm assuming you're not doing soup to nuts every single one of these rows, but it feels like a lot for a single human, so.
She's not your average.
Thank you for saying that. I owe you dinner.
Thanks a lot for pointing that out, Jen.
Recognizing we're a small-ish community and, there's a lot of hats that people wear, if we really wanna supercharge this thing and get it, a lot of these don't feel like they have a finish line, but to really kind of make impact, I guess I just ask you guys, as you're picking this up and looking at it, to think about, are there other people that may benefit from helping out? And I'm sure that your skills, can be used and helpful for a lot of this. Maybe it's just I'm misreading it, one person is just sort of lead orator, and there's people underneath you doing a lot of it, but.
Well, thank you. No, I mean, there's layers of people underneath us. I think, you know, as this does speak to the entire district, but remember that schools have school improvement plans themselves, so that's where you'll see the principals and the assistant principals and the guidance counselors listed. So this is really, starts with general office leading the work, but then it's the principals that support us and our different committees that support us. So thank you. I will certainly make sure I get that sound bite saved on my computer.
Just say yes.
I think, you know,
Go on record saying yes, that is.
But, you know, teaching and learning is why we're here. So I think that bucket is the largest for a reason, as well as social emotional learning. And, you know, I love the work that I do, so happy to continue doing it with everybody's help.
It's been a joint effort. We're lean and mean. But one thing Beth has learned about in the past 4 years is delegation. Because I'm not shy about it. And she's taken on a lot of heavy responsibilities, which will prepare her well for the superintendency. But you do have to, you're right, you have to look at, like, how much is reasonable. I think we've hit the sweet spot. You know, we've all felt really busy. But the beauty of it is, as Beth said, that those school improvement plans line up with this. So as they're taking care of something that's related to teaching and learning, they're actually addressing things that Beth needs addressed.
And then the teachers have their goals that they're evaluated on based on school improvement plans. So there's that thread that goes all the way through, which is, you know, why luckily at this point we seem to be moving in the same direction.
That thread is the most important piece.
And it's important that all those are done during, like, you know, through the pandemic, with no excuse of we couldn't do something because of the pandemic. None, you know, nothing. We never hear that. I think that's amazing from teachers or principals or, you know, nothing. Well, we didn't, you know, it was hard because it's not even in the dialogue and conversation, which I think is a huge testament.
If anything, we advanced in some ways. Like Beth mentioned the Google platforms. That's something that Google Classroom, that could take years under normal circumstances to get that off the ground with all the resistance and bringing people along. And it was like, yeah, we have to do it, period. So, and was that in the strategic plan? I bet it was. That using the technology.
Better use of technology, yes, yeah. So that leads to the second part of my presentation, if we're ready to move on, which is the silver linings. So I just want to call attention to one of the quotes that I put in here from Bradley Cooper. This is what I believe to be true. You have to do everything you can. You have to work your hardest, and if you stay positive, then you have a shot at a silver lining. And I know that Andrew already commended the boards of health, but I think that this is true for everybody in our community, the students, our teachers, our families, school committee members, the boards of health. Everybody put their best foot forward and killed themselves for the last 15 months, and I think we have so much to be proud of. And there's a reason that we cannot see straight and Friday can't come soon enough. So I just really want to thank everybody for doing that. I do think, you know, some people have funny feelings around the silver linings, but it did spark really positive, fun conversation around the district in the last month. We have, as I mentioned, a K through 12 team that has been meeting every other Wednesday with Project Springboard and educators from around the world. Our partner district is in Hawaii, I'm just mentioning. But, you know, we've been doing great work, and just to see that group of K through 12 people who didn't know each other ahead of time kind of become a family and start to share, you know, this happened at this elementary school and, oh, that connects with the high school. It's been really positive. And then they went out and there was time set aside in every elementary classroom, in every middle school social studies classroom, and in every high school English classroom to ask the kids. And instead of just doing a survey where sometimes you get a long response and sometimes you don't get any, they engaged in conversation so it could kind of snowball into, oh yeah, and what about this? And so we have feedback from every child in the district and every teacher in the district who also had the same conversation during department meetings or PLC meetings. We also sent a survey out to parents, and we've gotten a number of responses. So we are sifting through the data. It's going to take us a while, but there are definitely some quotes, especially from our little people that we want to capture, that just need to go into, you know, some sort of scrapbook about the pandemic. But we will continue to work together over the summer and have a presentation for you in August, and kind of hopefully to launch the school year at opening day of here's where we've been and here's our vision for education moving forward based on all the work the Academic Innovation Committee did a few years ago, and then the highlights of you know, what we want to keep from the pandemic, and then what we know is true in terms of maintaining our excellence as a school district that we've been doing well for years and years and years, all coming together to say, all right, 2021, 2022, here we go. We're rested and ready to go. So.
Thank you so much. Okay, so next agenda item is the first read. I think everyone has in their packet of the homeschool, the new homeschooling rules. Policy, sorry. And so if, we are, oh, okay, I didn't know. we were going to go right. Okay.
Yeah, I was inspired to do a slide presentation today, but I don't know how to operate the hand crank to get that.
It might take us until, 2022 to get this going.
Yeah.
Do you mind speaking from your slides? Is that okay?
What?
Do you mind just talking to the slides in front of you if we don't get this going?
Yeah, oh, yeah, sorry.
But from these slides.
Is this?
Slide.
Oh, shoot.
Did you already set it up before time?
Yeah, and it just went to sleep.
Oh, okay.
Go on. We're all trying so hard.
Yeah, there it is. Awesome. All right, so this is a first read of our homeschooling policy, which, you know, as the reference to file IHBG, it's our policy is based on the MASC model. And we are proposing an amendment to the policy. The amendment was the starting point, and there was a sort of a general overhaul of the policy, because there are three of them, sort of repeating, three policies that are sort of redundant. And so I did a little work to consolidate some of them, and I'll talk about that. But so our existing homeschooling policy, just to give you background on what it is and what it says, it establishes the procedures for home-based education programs, and there's a role for the parents and the role for a school committee who delegates the oversight responsibility to the superintendent. Oh, and that's the next slide, yeah.
Oh, you got it.
Yep. So parents, in order to get the process started, need to submit written notification within 14 days, along with a form that we provide detailing basically basic information about the student's name, age, residence, and number of hours that they plan to do the teaching. The school committee delegates, like I said, to the superintendent to evaluate the program curriculum, the teaching competency of the parents, instructional and teaching materials that will be used, and the focus mainly is to ensure that the studies that the program covers studies that are required by law and consistent with our standards of thoroughness and efficiency. That's out of the statute. The next slide. So the sort of substantive requirements for a homeschooling policy program at DS, and in order to qualify for a DS high school diploma is the bulleted provisions here. They've got to request permission. It's not an entitlement, but they've got to express permission on an annual basis. Demonstrate student progress through standardized achievement tests. And those can be tests that the parent sets up or tests that we offer, on an annual basis. The program may be audited by the superintendent, and what they would look at is test scores, achievement indicators, like those standardized achievement tests, and the instructional materials and methods used in the teaching. Next, they need to submit an instruction summary form, which doesn't have a whole lot of information about it, but the important piece is that the summary needs to include the results of the testing that was done, and it needs to be returned within 30 days. And then finally, they need to satisfy DESE competency requirements and our educational standards. And then the next slide. So our existing policy, like I said, is made up of, there are three policies. The first one, IHGB, that sets out the process for requesting permission for homeschooling. Then there's IHBGR that sets out the requirements for like substantive requirements for the homeschooling program. And then there's IHBGE, which really is just it's an advisory opinion on a Supreme Judicial Court decision regarding homeschool requirements that are actually reflected in the first two policies. So while it's redundant, it's actually kind of helpful and useful. It's a nice detailed sort of explanation of, you know, what the landscape is with homeschooling. So the issue that you're being asked to look at is that right now the policy says a student being educated in a home-based program within the schools may have access to public school activities of either a curricular or extracurricular nature upon approval of the superintendent. And the key term, which I should have highlighted and italicized, is the curricular piece. So the next slide. So I should have switched these bullets too. So the next slide said, so the proposed amendment is the second bullet, which is a student being educated in a home-based program within the schools will have access to the school's extracurricular activities, but will not have access to curricular programs unless required by law or upon approval of the superintendent. And the first bullet just basically says that, you know, per DESE, school districts have the discretion to allow homeschool students to join our curricular programs and extracurricular activities. And they say this is a local decision and DESE does not review these decisions. So the memo spells, you know, elaborates a little bit more, but the reason for this proposed amendment is that it has posed the intent of our policy was never to sort of maintain like a hybrid sort of a la carte type of homeschooling option. And, you know, and Beth can speak to this with, you know, more, you know, actual experience, but this has posed a challenge for administrators and staff to have people sort of, kids coming in and out of our curricular programs, like I said, on an a la carte basis. So we've been asked to consider as our first read this proposed amendment. And then the other piece that I did at the last bullet, I merged two of the policies to make it one, because even when I was charged with, you know, looking at this, I looked at the first policy and didn't realize there's another one that, you know, right behind it, and so I've merged them, and, you know, so didn't take anything out other than, you know, amendments changes consistent with this proposed amendment, but now hopefully we'll have this one policy that covers procedures for approval plus the content requirements, and then we'll have this DESE, you know, opinion sort of separately that can serve as sort of more color commentary and detail. So I don't know, Beth, if you have any more to say on that, or?
Thank you, that was very clear. I think just to point out, this doesn't happen often where we have parents ask for, you know, an a la carte menu, but it does happen from time to time where a child is uncomfortable changing for PE, and therefore they want to homeschool their child in PE, or their child was not given the math placement the parent hoped for, and therefore they want to homeschool their child in math, and then it becomes difficult, you know, to have the child coming to and from school and the responsibility there, and then the continuation of curriculum from year to year, and making sure that, you know, the parents are meeting the DESE requirements. It's just not how the homeschool policy and program was intended. And I think, you know, when Carolyn Whitaker left 4 years ago, she put this on the to-do list, and I think, you know, there's been other priorities as opposed to updating this policy, but I think the timeliness of updating it now is really important because we've had such a strange year, and we have really, as a district, done absolutely everything to make sure that every child was educated in a safe way that worked for their family. I don't want to come off a flexible year having parents think that their child can zoom in for half the classes and have, the other classes at home. So I think it's just important to clarify this now, with your, consideration.
So is the practical application of this that like a family is either gonna be homeschooling or they're in school?
Right.
And they're not just like, we're gonna teach this class at home, okay? But it still allows families who are homeschooling to participate in drama or to participate in the sports programs or the okay.
Yes, and another clarifying point too is the discretion of the superintendent. Obviously, we have some students who have 504 plans or IEPs that provide, responsibilities to the district. And so if there is a child who needs to come in for any reason, whether it's services or for social interactions or pragmatics, that will absolutely be allowed. It would just be at the discretion of the superintendent. So it's only extracurriculars unless there is a reason for the superintendent to approve otherwise.
Great, thank you. That was actually my question. Some children that are homeschooled will actually come for recess just to socialize. Will that still be allowed? If they're fully homeschooled, but the parent wants them to come for a recess. That has happened in other places, so you may get that question. I just want to make sure we're prepared to answer that.
I would say if it's during the school day, it would have to be at the discretion of the superintendent.
Okay, great.
Is this what do other districts do? Do we know?
I can tell you that in Easton, this was a real problem for us, and I'm sure Kathy's had some experiences with this. In Easton, it really had become the a la carte because they had a lot more walkers. We have a lot more parents willing to drive. So families would say, well, I'd like my kid to come in for this, this, and this. And it became a real problem because the state says, well, it's up to you. It's not really helpful. So to define this a little more, I think would have been helpful to me in that case. I don't know widely what other systems are doing. Do you?
I can speak to Brockton, and again, we allowed students to come in for extracurricular, obviously special education 504, but it wasn't a la carte.
I can speak to Needham, and we follow this type of policy. So you're either homeschooled or you're in, but you're always if you have special needs or any particular, accommodation or something, and students are allowed to participate in clubs and sports and after-school activities.
But doesn't it just transition the RATSNess to your discretion at this point, rather than creating a rules-based system that?
I think it's a little different.
Equitable?
I think it seems different though, Dennis, because in this case, you're where they were saying it's a local decision, they wash their hands of it completely. You're kind of defining it, you're essentially saying, no, you're either in or you're out, unless you have some kind of compelling, unless you get approval. But like anything with the superintendency, the buck has to stop somewhere. So it's kind of, what it's similar to is I would liken it to the kindergarten cutoff. Kindergarten cutoff, you're not going to see me bend on that. I just won't, because I know darn well if I do, that's it. The people will ask. So I think that the superintendent, if it was me, I would be saying it would have to be really, really compelling, super compelling, because I know I would then be setting precedent.
Well, I think that's my point, is that you're gonna be here for a year, right?
Mm-hmm.
You unintentionally, potentially set precedent, and then we have to deal with that into the future. It just feels as though we're not, by policy, no, but we'll allow it, assuming that it's in your good, the superintendent's good sort of discretion.
So the alternative would be to say,
Yes,
it's not allowed, period.
And I guess, do we define curricular? I'm assuming there's a broad definition on that, because I think like programs that spin out of DSA and the equity audit and whatever, is that curricular or not? I don't know.
Or recess.
Think about recess.
That's a
an
good
interesting
example.
concept.
It's a social aspect of it, yeah. They want their kids there.
Is that curricular? I don't know.
I think we have to allow for flexibility, because we can't think of all of the potential issues. Right,
Yeah, I
issues
don't
like
disagree. I
504s.
just want to recognize we're putting a tremendous amount of responsibility on the role of superintendent.
That's why they get paid the big bucks.
And there could be variability there, or we could live with something that was precedent setting by somebody who then we have to deal with it. and then we come back and create something new.
I mean, I do think that could happen. I would say that when I took over for the previous superintendent, there were some things, and I remember having conversations saying, well, we're not doing that anymore. We are not doing that. I can think of some right off the top of my head. And it was a little controversial. People didn't like it, but I knew in the long run it was better for the system. So it really does depend on the individual, but it's always going to depend on the individual.
Yeah, and I think that if we get to a point where we're seeing, gaping holes and inconsistent application, then it's our job, to, find out what the superintendent's doing and say, hey, I'm not articulating this well.
Well, it'd be your job to say, and when you evaluate the superintendent, that we
Yeah,
feel like you're very
exactly.
inconsistent on
Yeah, exactly.
policy
Right,
implementation or
right, exactly.
enforcement.
Right.
Oh, I just had a question, and if we have a question or a thought about another part of the policy that's not this amendment, is now the time to talk about it, or should we just send you a question or an email?
That's probably a Beth question if it's about
I think this is
another
a question and
provision.
answer time, right? So that for the second read, we get it right, so I would say bring it up.
So I just had a question about it's in Part B, number 2. It's about the testing as a required element of home-based education programs. And I totally understand the need for accountability and measuring where kids are, but I think a lot of families who choose homeschooling are choosing it because it's not sort of the traditional way of educating, and therefore the assessments might not be traditional. And everything in this is so parents in charge of home instruction should make provision for regular testing or use of other indicators of student progress, such as standardized achievement tests, as an alternative to home testing. And at the request of those in charge, schools will make provision for inclusion of home test children in the annual achievement test battery. So it's all about testing. So I'm just thinking, in keeping with our portrait of a graduate in academic innovation, is there room to expand and define assessment more broadly? I mean, knowing that kids for graduation would have to take the MCAS and period.
Yeah. I think practically speaking, the way that this is lived has been just to that point, Amanda, where, I approve the reports, because parents send in progress reports about what their child accomplished over the course of the year, usually in June or July. And they do send some sort of student work or assessment, and it's typically not a standardized assessment. We've only, as a district, asked students to participate either if they are looking to get a diploma, which usually homeschool students do not, so that's rare cases. They just don't, that's not part of their philosophy. Or if they do choose to come back to school, and there's a question of placement, for math, for example. If we don't have our own math assessment, we sometimes might have to take the MCAS prior to. But it's very rare, so if that's the will of the committee to expand the definition of assessment, that would be fine. That's what we've been doing anyways.
Yeah, I think that's why it's written such as, without, those are, standardized tests are an example, but the goal is some sort of measure that enables us to determine whether they meet our academic standards.
Right.
But yeah, we could list, there's nothing stopping us from listing other examples of the types of things we would accept.
Yeah, or just using assessment instead of testing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which my kids will tell you, that just means a test, Mom.
Right.
Yeah. But not always.
I think this is all really important and rich discussion on the policy questions and the long term. I'm thinking in the short term, if we were to move in this direction, are there families who will feel that the rug has been pulled out from under them, or who have been doing the a la carte approach, and how do we address that?
That's a great question. To some extent, it would be kind of starting ground zero, because they were either in person and hybrid with us, or they chose another route. So I think the timing is okay. The cases that come to mind around PE, for example, that child has fully rejoined. And then there's a couple of special education cases that we would have to consider, but again, there's discretion for that. So, the requests I've already gotten for next year, this would not pull the rug out. That doesn't mean I won't get a request tomorrow asking for a la carte, but it would be a new one. It would be a new situation, not one that's been allowed to date.
And to be clear, with respect to special ed, there are the students are entitled to their special ed services. And so that continues even in the whole homeschooling setting. And, you know,
Right.
there are regulations around what exactly that means and how it plays out, and it will depend case by case. You know, recess is a good question, you know, but there are regulations that govern it, so.
I think, Sarah, your point was excellent in that, is there anybody who's going to have to change, you know, the way that they've been doing things? And the short answer is no, but I think what it is preventing the next phase from happening coming off of the pandemic.
In the kind of, not reverse of that, but have we ever thought about asking some of the homeschool families, are there, maybe it's not even in the policy, but are there better ways that we could support, or, you know, not to give our teachers extra work or anything, but because of whatever reason, and they still want to be connected to DS, but I guess if they're not getting diplomas, which to me is just, I did not realize that people that went to homeschool don't go to get a diploma. So maybe let me just nix my whole question.
Parents have to ask for help when they need it. And it's usually in the beginning process of how do I apply and what does my educational program need to look like. I gave plenty of samples that we share. And in fact, we often, with veteran parents' permission, give contact information for families to connect.
Okay. Yeah, there's a pretty big network of homeschooling, right?
Big time.
Yeah.
And that's a growing network.
Yeah.
Do you know how many there are, Beth? What's our number average?
This year was unusual, so this year I would say we're
Excluding
probably
this
just over
year.
20. Generally speaking, we're under 10 families in a year. 10 children, so it's even fewer families.
Right.
In the region?
For the system.
For the whole system, all three schools, all three.
It's not a lot. So the reason I brought that up is because this isn't something that Beth is dealing with every single day. It's 10 children, 6, 7, 8 families.
Yeah, so Nancy, my question was just around the PE example of kids who might not want to change for PE. Is that a requirement that kids change for PE? Because I can think of a variety of reasons kids would not want to do that, and it feels.
They pretend, a lot of them pretend to change.
I mean, if you're fully homeschooled, you are responsible for providing the PE experience. Can you opt into
Kids
it?
who are at school, is it a requirement that they change for PE? Kids who are enrolled in school?
I believe unless there's extenuating circumstances, yes. In this case, I think there was more layers to that, but that's how it was explained to me, for the child who wanted to be in school. But my understanding is yes, unless there's some sort of social, emotional, or otherwise reason not to.
And
I have one child at home who is not a fan of it.
I'm sure. Is that a department decision? Is that I don't know, it just feels like that's sort of something that maybe we should look at for all kids.
Well, I was gonna say, I think that's an interesting question, but I feel like that's a little bit outside of
It
the
is,
policy.
yeah, I just wanted to bring it up while we were, yeah.
I'll bring it back to the principals too.
I have two really quick, I hope they're really quick questions. One is, can you just restate, you said this had sort of mentioned MASC, the template. This new combined now reflects the MASC, they've combined it into one, and so it's just one.
No, I combined it.
So MASC still has two?
Yeah.
Okay. And is that something, because I know that you thought about going more sort of MASC, you feel like that makes more sense?
Yeah, I think the two policies can be missed, you know, there's, when you read the first policy, there's no reason for you to think, oh, there's another one down here. So I've combined them, but we're still using MASC model language. And I've included the cross-references to the two separate policies.
Okay. That makes sense, and I know that we don't have everything that parallels, but I know that was something we were moving towards.
Yeah.
The other quick question was, and maybe you know this more, students who attend schools that do not have extracurriculars, I know have asked to then participate in extracurriculars?
Private school students?
Yeah, so
Yes.
does this cover it?
Yes, well, that's a different category of
Is it a different
students.
It's a different category, but if a child child lives in Dover or Sherborn, then they have every right to attend
So we,
university.
so we have a policy for that too, but it's separate, or is?
Because they're not homeschooled.
Right, but so.
I don't know if it's a policy.
I don't know if it's a policy, because I just don't have that in front of me, but I know that it's practice.
Okay. Just gonna throw that out there and ask, thank you.
Because I think it's law.
And especially for students who might be in an out-of-district placement, we have certainly have.
It needs to be policy though, right? If it's a law, shouldn't it be
I
policy?
wonder if it falls under special education, we should check into that, because I know, like, I was just saying, students who are out of district often, come home and then engage in soccer or drama.
We probably should look at that.
Yeah,
That
so
needs
just
more.
put something for the policy,
Yeah.
because you want more to do.
Yeah, I'm looking now, actually.
All right.
I'll look more.
Yeah, not to just figure out right now, just.
We know for sure that we have students who are outplaced
Yeah.
in private settings who can come back for courses.
For courses and, so
And
curriculum.
I think,
Definitely extracurricular.
definitely extracurricular, not courses. I feel like we've done that. We need to look into that more, I just don't know the answer. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm writing.
Any more questions or discussion on the handbook?
Not the handbook.
No,
The-
policy, I'm sorry,
No worries.
policies.
Policy in the handbook.
The homeschooling policy.
Thank you. Okay, so we can move on to the next agenda item, which is the approval of the minutes for April 6th and April 27th. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes for April?
You do the consent agenda all.
Yeah, you do it all
Okay.
together.
Oh, for all of it? And
Well,
then,
yeah, well, you can say,
okay.
within the consent agenda, we have this, and we have Kathleen's appointment to
Okay,
tech
great.
and accept.
Okay. Within the consent agenda, we have the approval of the minutes for April 6th and April 27th, and also to appoint Kathleen Smith to TEC and accept Board of Directors.
Is there a motion?
You can ask if people have any corrections or comments for the minutes.
Great, good point.
Right?
I think we do.
Does anyone have any comments or corrections for the minutes? Okay.
That's it, now we can do the motion.
So can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Is that the right, approve? Okay.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
We have to.
Do we do it by committee?
Oh, okay. All right, sorry.
Going Sherburne first.
Okay,
So I'm gonna so move.
okay.
All right.
For sure, one. I apologize.
I'll second.
Okay.
So can I just say, well, we don't have to do the roll call vote. You can
Yeah.
just ask,
Well,
you can do it as committee as
Yeah.
one, and then have everybody raise their
Okay.
hands or say aye.
Okay. I have a point of clarification question after this whole thing is over. Okay, so any discussion? All in favor?
Right.
Okay.
Pass it to.
For Dover?
Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thanks, Mark. Second?
Second.
Leslie? Thank you. Any discussion? I have a question. Can you just say more about what the TEC and accept, what that
Yes,
stands for?
Yes, so tech and accept are two collaboratives that we belong to. So I've been your representative for tech. Sherburne's not part of tech.
No, we're joint members of tech.
We are joint members, right. So I've been a member of the board of directors of tech and accept, and in lieu of school committee representatives, which is kind of tough.
Tech is a lot of school committee members, but we can't be on the school committee members because we pay dues for one, so our superintendent has to be our vote at tech. And that changed when they restructured their dues. And it's much more economical for us to be treated as one district, but we can't have 3 school committee members go, so they deem our superintendent to be our.
And these collaboratives, we take advantage of these collaboratives in terms of saving money by basically joining with bunches of towns to provide services for our kids. or to,
Tech, we do a lot of our purchasing.
Oh, the purchasing, the tech bid.
bidding, yeah. So Dover, I told you, went to the oil, the fuel oil, that's through tech.
right. So that's the, it's buying in bulk gives us power. So having Kathleen there, it's like serving on the school committee, essentially for that collaborative, or those two collaboratives.
But it's fair to say this is just continuation of past practice, and we believe it's in the benefit of the districts to arrange it this way.
It is.
Oh, yeah. All right, shall we vote? Any other discussion? All right, Leslie?
You just do all, everyone in favor? All in
Oh, all in
favor?
favor?
Okay, and Rachel.
Sure. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as stated on the,
So moved.
Diane Honey, second?
Second.
Judy Miller. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Great.
All right, great. Next item is the, for our information and for our review, unless anyone is going to talk about the schedule, anyone wants to talk about or discuss the draft school committee dates for next year, or for this year, for 21-22. It's all in our packet.
They can be adjusted, I'm assuming?
Definitely. Bank on it.
Yeah, that's- All right. All right, before I close out, I just want to point of order of, and maybe I'm using that phrase inappropriately, but I just want to thank Leslie for all that you've done as chair. Angie, for all that you've done as chair. Sarah is now chair of Dover. I'm now chair of Sherborn. And we have just the new member, David Katzis on the Sherborn School Committee and the Joint School Committee. Also, the other, kind of the elephant in the room is this guy won't be here in our meetings anymore. And on behalf of the Sherborn School Committee, we have a statement we'd like to read.
Oh, thank
Okay?
you. I hope it's thank you.
Wait until she reads it all. Exactly. So, Andrew, thank you for serving our district in your caring, authentic, passionate, and common sense manner. And all of those words were chosen very carefully with you. In always keeping our students at the center of your actions and your decisions. Thank you for your open mind and willingness to listen to all opinions, for embracing change when that wasn't the easiest path, as we saw demonstrated tonight, and for being a strong and compassionate leader for our students, our parents, our teachers, support staff, and for our community at large during one of the most complex and trying times. It's with great respect and admiration that we extend our sincere gratitude for everything you've done for us, and you will surely be missed. We wish you health, belly laughs, and cold drinks on the beach. Great luck on your new adventure and happy retirement.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Can I read something too?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is personal, this is from me. Andrew, we're coming to the end of a very unique and challenging year. I am sure you could argue this is one of the most challenging years of your career. I never once envied your position and often felt empathy for you, knowing there was no one answer that would work for everyone. Nevertheless, you led in a steadfast manner and got our elementary children back earlier than nearly all, if not all, of our neighboring towns. For that, I thank you, and our children thank you. It was no small task, and the goalposts were constantly moving. Thank you for your leadership and guidance throughout the year, our first and hopefully last pandemic in the year that was 2020, 2021. Pandemic aside, your devotion to our schools for these past 4 years has been unyielding. You ensured we were student-centered and all students were heard and felt safe. You led the reorganization of student services, bringing Kate in as a director. Even more recently, you ensured we have an amazing leadership team by forming a team of Jim Carnes and Deb Reinman. On a personal note, I have appreciated your guidance and push to become a better leader in our community and model for my children. Thank you for your commitment to our children and our community. I wish you and your family well. We are DS.
Thanks, Leslie.
Andrew, one last. You have 3 committees.
I know.
Just on behalf of the Regional School Committee, thank you for all that you have done for our two communities and our larger community over the past 4 years. Thank you for your strong leadership during challenging times, your brave willingness to embrace change and tackle long-standing challenges faced by all our communities. Thank you. Your work with us will forever be remembered as the impact that you made on your hometown and on our town and the futures of our children to come.
No, thanks, Maggie.
Oh, to hug people!
I know. So, oh,
No, I'm not going to say anything.
Okay, all right.
I've said enough. Thank you so much,
But Andrew,
guys.
you mentioned today what you got from.
Yeah, the PTO, the PTO,
Four PTOs.
the 4 PTOs got together. I just saw it in my calendar, PTO. I'm like, Cheryl, what is that? Because I had said to her, no
Yeah.
events. And she said, no, the PTO just wants to do a little something, it's very small. And so they had sweet endings, and they had these wonderful little dessert cups set up in the caf. And then they gave me this beautiful bench with a plaque on it, and made with recycled plastic materials, but gorgeous, really, really classy looking bench. And we're gonna replace those ones that don't look so great, Dawn tells me.
On the bus loop between the middle school and Linquist, the ones that are like shredding.
Where I'd love to talk to the kids over there, that's the funny part.
But one of them has a plaque on it, honoring Andrew's 4 years here. So
It's really
Which
sweet.
says, thank you to Dr. Andrew Keough, who served as superintendent from, this year to this year, and always, what? Putting the kids first.
Yeah, putting the kids first, and I know that Beth gave them the language.
I just voted amongst the few ideas.
No, they did say. You know what? The one thing I'm super proud of is that I held true to that, even in the face of tremendous, withering pressure. You know, that the kids are going to come first, and I honestly didn't care who I offended, because I used to say to myself, I don't want to get to my deathbed and have regrets. And I made a commitment to the kids a long time ago, and I wasn't going to bend on that. And I know I probably offended some people right in this room, but I was going to push that. And you know what? They're doing great. They're doing great. And I have no regrets about that. And Amanda knows that was my philosophy at Wellesley High School so many years ago. It's just what I believe. Sometimes I'm maybe not that balanced, but at the end of the day, that's who we're here for. That's why we get the big dough, kids. So you guys were awesome, and thank you very much. I wish you all the luck. Kathy, I know you're going to do a great job. You've got a great team of people. These are skilled people. They, like the high school seniors, are tempered by the pandemic and some other challenges in the past few years, and I think you're going to find this to be a really good place and a good team. We are passionate, so that can be a double-edged sword.
right.
I'll fit right in.
All right, well, I'm going to call to adjourn. Can I have?
Everybody raise your hands if you want to adjourn. Yes, it's all yours.
Right.
All right.